459 An Introduction to God. Dabarym, words. 8. Shem, Renown. Scattering the flock. One of the most extraordinary passages to consider relative to the religiously inspired substitution of Lord Baal for Yahowah's name is found in the 23rd chapter of Yirmiyah, Yah teaches and guides, Jeremiah. This pronouncement is also prophetic of Yahowah's return. So that we comprehend God's perspective on religious and political leaders, so that we are aware of why he was addressing this specific audience, and so that we understand his message, we are going to invest the time required to properly evaluate our Heavenly Father's teaching on the consequence of religious rhetoric, especially as it relates to the substitution of his name, Yahowah, with the adversarial title, Baal, Lord. Over the course of the next 20 pages, your eyes will be opened to a perspective you may not have otherwise considered. What follows is a wholesale repudiation of religion, its means and consequence. Through his prophet, Yirmiyahu, Yah raises and lifts up, Yah teaches and guides, so respect and revere Yah, commonly transliterated Jeremiah. Yahowah offered the following indictment of Israel's religious and political leadership. Woe, Howie, alas, consider this a warning, garnering your undivided attention, to the shepherds, Ra, to those who tend to, care for, feed, and shear the flock, who have led astray and destroyed, causing 460 irreparable damage, Abad, who have ruined by misleading others, causing them to die, perishing, such that they cease to exist, and whose actions have caused things of value to be squandered and wasted. Peel participle, a verbal adjective whereby the object suffers the effect of being misled, because, they have scattered, pools, they have chaotically displaced, attacking, dashing and dispersing. Hyphal participle, a verbal adjective whereby the subject, the bad shepherds, have caused the object, the misled sheep, to go astray, becoming like their evil leaders in the process. The flock, etstasan, the sheep, from my shepherding and nurturing, marrieth any, of my guidance, leadership, protection, and company, from my, to consider the purpose of Ra, pasturing, grazing, guiding, feeding, associating with, befriending, teaching, tending to, and shepherding a flock of sheep, prophetically declares, Naum, announces and conveys the message with authority, reveals, foretells, and predicts. Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence. Yirmiyah, Yah teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:1. Since the role of a shepherd is to lead and protect the sheep, when projected onto human beings, we find that the role has been misappropriated by religious and political leaders. And here, as it is throughout the Torah and prophets, God is warning his people that their rabbis and politicians have led them astray, causing irreparable harm. By using Naum, to declare in advance of it occurring, we know that God's pronouncement against Israel's shepherds is addressing future generations. By using Abad, to mislead and marrieth any, my shepherding, the crime the political and religious Jews have committed is to lead their brethren away from Yahowah's company and care. Rabbis in particular have deprived Jews of God's 461 leadership and protection, a crime for which Shaul is prescribed. If you are a Jew seeking to become Yahweh, beloved of Yah again, it is likely that you have not embarked upon a liar, but that you are aware of the process. I say this because proof of Judaism, ultra-Orthodox, is the only variety accepted, signed by a rabbi recognized by the chief rabbinate of the Haredim, determines if an applicant is entitled to a liar as a Jew. The document is required for any applicant who wants to immigrate to Israel and receive Israeli citizenship, based on the religious interpretation of the law of return. It is not only an expensive and burdensome religious bureaucracy, but the Haredim also play dirty and blacklist rabbis who are less than ultra-Orthodox and deny citizenship, and thus the ability to vote, to anyone who isn't exactly like them. While the law of return simply states that a qualified applicant must demonstrate that they have been born to a Jewish mother, which is another rabbinical test and not from the Torah, although it was enacted because so many Jewish women were raped by Christian and Muslim men that it became a survival mechanism, or that they have converted to Judaism. It does not specify that they must be Haredim, nor does it delineate which rabbis are qualified to provide a certificate of proof of Judaism. There are no official guidelines explaining any of this. Capitalizing upon the ambiguity, and unduly empowered under Netanyahu's ruling coalition, rabbis made themselves the sole authority, even requiring a personal endorsement from the rabbi at the synagogue the individual attended in their home nation, thereby excluding ethnic Jews, the only ones Yahowah desires, in favor of religiously observant Jews, the ones Yahowah despises. For spouses, a marriage certificate is also required, and the only ones which are recognized are signed by ultra-Orthodox rabbis. 462 The only reason that most Israelis are secular Jews under such circumstances is that, while the law of return was passed in 1950, prior to former Prime Minister Netanyahu giving the Haredim rabbis absolute control over Aliyah so that they would support his ruling coalition, over 1 million secular Jews through the 1990s, especially from Russia, immigrated to Israel. As a result of Netanyahu's backroom political malfeasance, the majority of American Jews, who are either secular or reformed, are not welcome. The affidavit of a Reform or Orthodox rabbi in the United States, where over 7 million Jews reside, is automatically disapproved because they are not conservative enough for the Haredim rabbinate in Israel. Making matters worse, the Haredim ultra-Orthodox do not even recognize Israel as a state and they do not support the nation. Most are parasites, receiving Netanyahu-sponsored entitlements to play religion all day without paying taxes or defending the nation in the IDF. If that were not bad enough to assure that Israeli Jews remain estranged from Yahowah and excluded from the covenant, there is something worse, indeed, heartbreaking. The term Aliyah is not based upon Allah, to rise as the Haredim claim. It is a compound of al, over, above, or against and yeah. Aliyah means over, above, and against Yahowah. And not so coincidentally, Yahowah's al, opposition to the rabbis is the operative phrase in God's next statement. Aliyah is a rabbinic term describing the person who is offered the distinction of the Torah reading in a synagogue, or at a bar mitzvah. The religious designee is the one chosen to be Aliyah, over yeah. In the name of full disclosure, the feminine noun, Aliyah, Strong's H 5944, appears 20 times in the Tanakh. But its definition does not resemble the rabbinic usage. 463 Aliyah is defined as a roof, room or chamber and is typically translated as parlor. Should you wonder why Yahowah is so vehemently opposed to rabbis and Judaism, the Aliyah, over and above yeah inference is as good as any. And should you wonder why religious Jews wrote Yahowah's name out of their religion, Aliyah does a fine job of exposing their attitude toward God. So consequently, Laken, therefore accordingly, in return, rightfully and assuredly as a result, this is what, focusing our attention on what will follow, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah, the God, Elohim, Mighty One, of Yisrael, Yisrael, a compound of ish, individuals, who Sarah, strive and contend with, or engage and endure with, El, God, has to say, Amar, promises, Kal perfect, in opposition to, Al, over, above, and against, those acting as shepherds, Hara, those tending to, feeding, and shear the flock, those leading, feeding, and shearing, Hara, the shepherds tending to and guiding, ruling over and herding, my people, Ethameni, my family, you, Atom, the many of you, yourselves, have led astray, pushed away, and scattered, pause, you have chaotically displaced, attacking, dashing, and dispersing, even besieging and separating, Hyphal perfect, the subject, in this case the rabbis, have caused the object, the misled sheep, to go astray for a period of time, causing them to be like their evil shepherds in the process, my flock, Ethtasan Eni, my sheep, and, Wah, you have consistently driven them away by continually seducing them, Nadakhem, you have compelled and enticed them, leading them astray, you have lured and drawn them away, preying upon them, you have exerted enormous pressure and thereby thrust them aside, exiling and banishing them, you have made them outcasts, causing them to be cast down, Hyphal imperfect, the religious leaders have 464 continually seduced and harassed God's sheep and thereby caused them to become outcasts for a prolonged period of time, just like themselves. Therefore, Wah, in addition, you have not been concerned about them, though Pakad Ethem, you have not taken them into account, attended to them, or considered them, Kal perfect. So behold, Hine, at this moment, right here and now, pay attention to this, look up, this point is being emphasized, I, myself, will hold you accountable and will reckon this against you, Pakad Atom, I will consider what you have done and take it into account, I will take inventory of this opposition, retaining a record regarding your accountability, even summon and punish you, Kal participle, a descriptive verb which presents an actual time of reckoning against the rabbis, because of, the willful misconduct and unethical nature, Roa, the harmful effect, the displeasing and injurious result, the corrupting and perverting aspects, and the evil and improper intent, from Ra, the evil and bad, willfully wrong, corrupting, perverting, injurious, and shattering consequences, of your foolish deeds and wanton abuses, Malal Atom, defiling actions and abusive practices, from Alol, ruthless behaviors, malevolent dealings, deceptive practices, foolish acts, and childish tendencies, prophetically declares, Naum, announces and conveys the message with authority, reveals, foretells, and predicts Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his existence and our Shalom, restoration. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yeh, Jeremiah 23:2. This is so important. Yahowah has removed all doubt. He has stated that he is the God of Israel, naming his flock. He said that the shepherds are misleading his people, affirming that he was not addressing sheep. He 465 called the rabbinical malfeasance roa, willful misconduct, letting us know that the impropriety has been deliberate. He even called their practices malal, wanton, and malevolent. Affirming that I was right about a liar, Yahowah said, Any pakad al atom, I, myself, will hold you accountable and will reckon this against you. This is the consequence of revering rabbis over and above Yahowah. This prophetic indictment, like so many others, is directed against the leadership of Jewish political and religious institutions. Rather than guiding, protecting, and nurturing Yah's flock, concerned only with themselves, they have become unethical, harmful, ruthless, wanton, and deceptive. Religion and politics remain the root of much evil. They are the most deceptive, destructive, deadly, and damning institutions on earth. So, for Yahowah to be fair, to be a worthy shepherd of his people, he will hold them accountable. He will treat the rabbis as they have treated their victims. And that is why Shaul, the place of separation, will be a very religious and political place, a prison filled with rabbis competing with one another to see who can make the most rules and earn the distinction of chief warden. Yahowah has just revealed one of life's greatest ironies. Religious establishments, such as ultra-Orthodox Judaism, whose rabbis claim to be serving God, are actually driving people away from God. Israeli politicians, like former Prime Minister Netanyahu, who claim to be concerned about their people, who sought the opportunity to lead them and protect them, exploited Israelis for their own personal gain. God has put us on notice that religious and political rulers are not only counterproductive hypocrites, but they are also roa, wicked, harmful, injurious, unethical, and downright evil. 466 Although to be fair, Benjamin Netanyahu isn't nearly as self-serving as the sniveling progressive, Yair Lapid. While God's interests outside of Israel are negligible, suffice it to say that the amalgamation of church and state has also exerted enormous societal, cultural, economic, militaristic, political, and religious pressure to forcibly impel and seductively seduce those these institutions have sought to control, effectively exiling and banishing billions from God, thrusting them aside and casting them down. The Pope even carries a staff as a symbol of his presumptuous authority. This is Babel, the confounding nature of Babylon, personified, exemplifying the oppressive nature of human institutions. It is indicative of the very things Yahowah wants us to walk away from before we walk to him. The simple and indeed obvious truth is that Yahowah chose these people and this place to make himself known to everyone. Most of what he says to and of Israel is true for all of the rest of us. YYV and Israel are God's chosen paradigms. There is one Torah, and one covenant. So now that we know that Almighty God is addressing Jewish political and religious leaders and that he is angry with them for having separated his flock from him, let's see if we can ascertain any additional insights regarding the timing of this prediction. The discussion continues by telling us that God will gather up and restore the sheep who have been dispersed and misled. I suppose he'll forego the rabbinic endorsement currently required for a liar in the process. Then, and so, myself, will obtain and gather up, kabats, I will collect, harvest, pick up, engage relationally with, then assemble, peel imperfect, the flock will be put into action by Yahowah with ongoing consequences, the remnant, shereth, the rest and remainder of the descendants, even the residue which is 467 left of my flock, to san my sheep, from, out of, all, shurl, of the lands, ha-eres, the realms, places and nations, where, Asher, in which as a result of the relationship and to show the way home, I have temporarily scattered them, Nadek I have driven and exiled them for a time, cast and banished them, Hyphal perfect, there by name, Shem, where their presence is of renown and they have developed a reputation. But, my desire is to return and restore them at this time, Shub Henna, with a contingency which must be met. I have decided to gather them up, bring them back, turn them around, and completely renew them, Hyphal Vov perfect, Wakatal consecutive. Should they be ready, I will choose to engage at this time in a manner which transforms them, causing them to be more like me, upon their pasture, abode, and home, Al-Nor Henna, over their beautiful dwelling place and campground, upon their residence and settlement. And, they will be fruitful and flourish, Para, they will reproduce, branch out, grow, and live abundant lives, Kal perfect consecutive. During this time I want them to actually bear fruit. And, they will increase and become great, living a long and abundant life, Rabbah, they will be tremendously empowered, their status will be substantially elevated, their lives will be prolonged, they will multiply, and they will grow exponentially, perfect consecutive. During this time it is my desire that they become numerous, are actually empowered, and thrive. Yirmiyah, raises and lifts up, Jeremiah 23:3. There will be no laws or affidavits, no religious rulings, no involvement from the office of the chief rabbinate, and no aliyah in the rabbinic sense. God will dispense with the red tape and bring his people home, Israel and his sheep, and he will tend to his flock. 468 Shub, return was scribed in the Wakatal, or Vov perfect, which is called the consecutive perfect. It addresses a time-limited action which is either conditional, and thus contingent upon something occurring, or volitional, expressing desire in the first person, serving as an equivalent of the cohortative. Therefore, Yahweh's choice to bring Israelites back home is contingent upon them acknowledging him and accepting his conditions. With the hyphal stem, he is offering to develop a productive relationship with these immigrants, such that he provides the certification of their acceptance. Written in this way, Yahowah is telling us that he will assuredly bypass the rabbis and their approach to aliyah. Depending upon how one deals with Sham, place or Shem, name, God's concern may be that his flock has been driven away from his name, Yahowah, such that Jews are no longer YYV1C8. So, what's inferred is that he will restore them by returning them to his name. Therefore, he is underscoring the consequence of removing his name, Yahowah, from his word, and from our collective awareness. Jews will become YYV1C8 again. And Yerushalayim will once again reside within Yehuda. A precursor to the prediction listed at the end of this passage occurred in 1948, when Israel became a nation. For the first time since the Roman destruction of Yahweh, Judea in 133 CE, the YYV1C8, Jews they exiled and enslaved throughout the world were allowed to return to their homeland. And yet, these 7 million Israelis were not the Sherith, remnant of whom Yahweh was speaking, because his flock has not yet been restored or renewed. They still remain in many nations and have not yet flourished nor become great, at least to the extent required by this promise. Therefore, this prophetic pronouncement is directed toward the remnant which will greet Yahweh by name 469 upon his return on the day of reconciliations. It depicts the time when he will renew his covenant with YYV1C8 and Israel. On that day, then, I will raise up and establish, I will take a stand on their behalf, and I will confirm and fulfill my promise to confirm and honor, hyphal perfect, over them, Alhem, those who serve as shepherds, those who tend to, nurture, guide, and protect, so that, they will do what is required to nurture, guide, and protect them, Rahem, it is my desire for them to lead, direct, and feed them at this time, Kal Wakatal perfect. And, they shall not be afraid, they shall not be intimidated or terrorized, dread or venerate anyone, ever again, any longer. And they will not be dismayed or discouraged, chatteth, they shall not be confused or abused, shattered or falter, nor will they be discounted or disregarded, pakad, and they will not be inventoried as merchandise as a result of not being properly considered or appropriately evaluated, prophetically declares, Naum, promises, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:4. To shepherd is always a verb in Hebrew, and not a noun as it is typically rendered in English. Therefore, the act of shepherding necessitates actively engaging with the sheep to guide, protect, and nurture them. Doing this job well is something Yahweh values to such a degree that he afforded this distinction to his son, Daud. He is the of Israel in addition to being the Melech, Mashiach, and Yatzer. 470 Also interesting, while Daud will be the lead shepherd, he will encourage others to assist. In this way, he will be like his Father who prefers to act with us rather than alone. Our Heavenly Father provides many contrasts for us to consider. In this one, man scatters and defrauds and Yahweh gathers and enriches. Man misleads while God guides. What little question there may have been as to whether Yahweh was judging the political and religious leadership of Israel 2,700 years ago or in the days prior to his return, is resolved by the concluding line. Between Muslims and progressives, Catholics and communists, especially conspiratorialists, Jews remain the most discounted and abused people on earth. And as is typically the case with deceivers such as these, they are guilty of the crimes they falsely ascribe to others. Speaking of falsely ascribing, I've done it too, albeit inadvertently. And importantly, in the way of Moses, the worst thing I have ever done prepared me for the best. While a Christian, I was conditioned to read every prophetic reference to David as if it applied to Jesus Christ. When I stopped doing so, my religion lost its credibility, something faith cannot afford. Sadly, I fell victim to the absurd notion that God wasn't bright enough to keep his name straight, and that he spoke of David when he actually meant to say Jesus. But since there were no prophecies that address the arrival or role of Jesus, how was one to believe he was the most important person in God's story? The Christian answer is replacement theology. When the nameless and antiquated old God anointed David, we were told that he was actually christening Jesus. When the Lord revealed that David was returning with him, well, what he meant to say was that there would be a 471 second coming of Jesus Christ, which took some faith considering there was no first coming. When the God of the Old Testament announced that David was his son and he was his father, and when he proclaimed that a child would be born and a son would be given, we were taught to ignore the name he provided. After all, our new and improved man God had come to save us from the senile and archaic Creator. But then, why were we so entertained by the stories and prophecies of the Old Testament, and why were we so desperate to tie them to our guy if the old God couldn't be trusted? Since there isn't a single statement pertaining to Yahowah replacing Yahweh with Dabarym, or Daud with Jesus, and thousands which say otherwise, Christians contrived a religion out of making $! Up. If it required that God suffer from Alzheimer's and dementia, it no longer mattered because they replaced Yahowah with Jesus. The world's most popular religion would be nothing more than a shell game of hidden truths and obvious replacements. Although I had become an agnostic prior to engaging with Yahowah, as there were too many conflicts and conundrums in Christianity to persist as a believer, I remained imprinted by many of the religion's myths, including the way I misinterpreted prophecies pertaining to David such as the one which follows. I initially wrote my introduction to Yahowah's next statement, as if the shepherd was symbolic of the Messiah Yahusha. As a mission statement, this was an accurate assessment. As a name and title, not so much. Correcting this error in judgment, while striving to remain consistent with what Yahowah actually promised, is the reason I began rewriting every volume of the Yada Yahowah series. Improving the translations and correcting the commentary would consume my every waking moment for 3 years. 472 While it was my mistake to clean up, in typical fashion, Yahowah transformed these days into the most enjoyable, enlightening, and productive of my life. So, since it took me the better part of 2 decades to fully appreciate the role of father and son in our redemption, finally accepting Yahowah's and Daud's testimony at face value, I am empathetic, knowing that what you are now reading may be a jolt to your soul. What took me decades to ascertain, you are now confronting within the first hours of your journey. Since you are entitled to know, I gradually came to the realization that Yahowah really was speaking about David as I translated and retranslated, contemplated and came to more fully appreciate, the first prophecy I encountered 22 years ago, Shamuel, 2 Samuel 7. Each time through its words, I moved closer to the truth, to Yahowah's and Daud's perspective and intent. And then, while composing observations, it was as if a ton of religious rubble was finally being tossed aside as I came to realize that Isaiah 9 was also addressing Daud, not my stand-in, the Messiah Yahusha. In that this was my former religion's most important prophecy, it was cathartic to recognize that Daud's name was inscribed in the midst of it for a simple reason, it was all about him. From there, I began rewriting the first 2 volumes of Coming Home, motivated to present the Son of God and the Messiah correctly. For YYV1, Jews, this was a watershed moment, because it means that they were correct when they realized that the misnomer Jesus could not have been the Messiah. It also meant that the rabbis were wrong because the returning Mashiach is not only known, he is Yahowah's Ben, son, the Melech, king and Ra, shepherd who is the Zmak, branch. All of this and more became irrefutable when translating the first 25 Mizmor, psalms which serve as the basis of Coming Home. 473 It was a cause for celebration because I was now closer to the truth than anyone had been in 2,000 years. And yet, even then, I missed the most important revelation in human history when it was right before my eyes. Just as there was no Jesus Christ, there was no Messiah Yahusha either. The reason the Christian New Testament avoids attributing the fulfillment of Pesach, Matzah, Bikurim, and Shabat to Jesus is because their misnomer had nothing to do with them. By contrast, the reason Daud speaks of fulfilling them in first person is because he did. The reason Daud's name and his titles are mentioned in every prophecy regarding the fulfillment of the Modim, is because father and son would support one another throughout. My awakening to what is now obvious, indeed irrefutable, came when translating Mizmor 26 through 30 for the 3-volume of Coming Home, Daud, Beloved. When the prophet explained that this was his decision, one Yahowah supported, I found myself asking why father and son decided to fulfill the 7 Mikrei together. Why, for the love of God, would anyone volunteer to suffer as the Pesach El and then endure a trip to Shaul, hell during Matzah, especially knowing that Yahweh would deny and denigrate him while Dabarym would rob him of his sacrifice and acclaim? The answer is that he was the foremost expert on the Torah, the very book the religious scholars deny existed at the time. Daud knew that Moses had been the perfect paradigm, a man of exemplary intelligence and character, and that he had performed the most magnanimous and selfless acts ever experienced by his people. Nonetheless, the children of Israel treated Moses as if he had leprosy, as if he had dragged them into slavery as opposed to freedom. The Israelites were reprehensible ingrates, and nothing had changed over the ensuing centuries. 474 So, Daud, knowing that he, unlike Moses, had made his share of lamentable mistakes, realized that for him to prevail as the eternal king of Israel, something would have to change. And the most effective way for him to transform his reputation and his people's attitudes would be to become their savior. He wouldn't just volunteer to fulfill Pesach and Matzah, he would insist upon it, making a case for doing so that his father would appreciate and accept. It would be 2 days of hell, one on earth being tortured by the Romans and one in Sheol to deposit our guilt. But as a result, at least for those saved by his sacrifice, he would enjoy an eternity of gratitude and respect. That is not only the truth, it is the whole truth, so help me God. Daud would live 3 lives. While the outcomes and events would differ, in each he would be the Son of God, his firstborn, the Messiah and King, the Savior of his people. This being the truth, all 30 books would need to be rewritten to accurately reflect it. But what an honor, to not only have found the greatest treasure in human history but, also, be afforded the privilege of sharing it for the benefit of God's people and with Yahweh's overt blessing. My wife had been right, when moments after completing the initial 2 volumes of Coming Home, and starting the third, she, a Yahud Jew, acknowledged that while she came to know Yahweh and engaged in the covenant by reading the original series, based upon what we had learned, the original books were no longer accurate with regard to the identity of the Messiah and Son of God. She asked me to rewrite all of them, realizing that accuracy was essential to awakening fellow Yahudim. 10 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, and 2 years later, I finished doing as my wife had requested. And it was then that I learned from the Mizmor that there was far more to 475 make known about Daud's role in the lives of the covenant's children. Yes, Daud will soon return on Yom Kippurim to provide reconciliation, but he has been here twice previously. He and his father had taken a stand to enable the proper path home. Now pay attention, Hine, behold, look now right here and see, to the days Yaumim, the time, which will have come for inclusion, Bo, which will have arrived in a moment in time to pursue a return and a harvest, Cal participle, a genuine verbal adjective, prophetically declares, Naum, reveals long before it occurs, Yahowah, Yahowah, as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, when, Wah, in addition, I will have enabled restoration through Daud by raising up and establishing with Daud. Cum la Daud, I will have made it possible for Daud to fulfill the promise to restore, I feel perfect first person singular, Yah will enable Daud to fulfill and restore by taking a stand, the correct and proper, Zadik, the rightful and righteous, the just and vindicating, the justified, right, and acquitting, means to life and growth, Zmak, branch from which the living bud and blossom, sprout and grow. And so, Wah, he will have provided counsel about his reign as king after having pondered the implications, Melech Melech, he will have provided authorized advice to consider pursuant to his sovereignty, Cal perfect, because, Wah, he obtained the insights needed to understand, the skill to succeed, and the capacity to instruct, Shekel, he developed the proper focus and the knowledge from sound instruction and teaching, the intellectual capacity, and cerebral acumen to prudently prosper by offering that which is proper, Hyphal Wakatal perfect, enabling ongoing insights, subject to volition. 476 Then, Wah, he will be motivated to act and engage in, Wah-Sah, he will perform, work at, and profit from, Kal Wakatal perfect, the way to exercise good judgment regarding the means to fairly resolve disputes, Mishpat, the basis upon which sound decisions are made and judgment is executed to achieve justice, from my, to ponder the implications of Shafot, making thoughtful decisions regarding what is just, appropriate, logical, and fair, and correctly providing vindication, Wazadaka, by being upright, righteous, just, proper, moral, and acquitting, in the land, Baha Eres, within the material realm and on earth. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yah, Jeremiah 23:5. It is hard to overstate the relevance of this prophecy, especially within the context of Daud's 3 lives and what he and Yahweh have accomplished together. The days which would arrive for inclusion, this time of restoration and return of which Yahweh prophetically spoke, would play out over Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim in year 4000 year, 700 years after this was announced. God would enable his son, Daud, to take a stand which would restore his people. The means to life and growth provided by the branch would be correct and proper, justifiable, right, and vindicating. This is the express purpose of the Modim. And for this to occur as promised, father and son would work together, with Yahweh enabling Daud. More than anyone who has ever lived, Daud, through his Mizmor and Marshal, revealed that he had pondered the implications and then provided counsel pursuant to his future reign as king. And it is by closely examining and carefully considering what he wrote 3,000 years ago that we have deduced a more complete and accurate assessment of his contributions to our redemption and reconciliation. 477 Dowd obtained the insights he needed to understand by listening to Yahowah and reading the Torah. As a result, he came to rely upon his father and was afforded the ability to succeed and the capacity to instruct. Simply said, he told us what he was going to do and then he did it. And all the while, he explained his rationale and resulting benefits. The Messiah was motivated and eager to engage because he was committed to do what was required to justifiably resolve the disputes separating Yahweh from Yahowah. For those exercising good judgment regarding this resolution there would be vindication. With Yahowah's support, Dowd would become our savior. Yahowah never works alone. It isn't in his nature and would be contrary to his purpose. He created us because he wanted to enjoy a working relationship with humankind. The universe, especially at 6 dimensions, is ginormous, and there is a lot to oversee. Then beyond the material realm, is the spiritual realm, extending into eternity in the 7th dimension. Dowd just happens to be his favorite son. Therefore, Yahowah is sharing his son's crowning achievement, the most joyous moment since creation. As we approach eternity with the same mindset and resolve, pursuing what is right by doing what is correct, we will benefit from what they accomplished by fulfilling the modim. Let's be clear, in this prophecy, and all others like it, including Yeshaya, Isaiah 9 and Shamuel, 2 Samuel 7, there are only 2 names presented, Yahowah's and Dowd's. This is about them, their relationship, and what they have achieved. 478 Dowd, David is Tzaddik, correct and thus acquitted and vindicating. He is Tzaddik, right with God because he is Tzaddik, right about God. The man who, by his own admission, had more faults than hairs on his head, was seen as Tzaddik, innocent as a result of the Torah, Mikra, and Berith. One of Yahowah's favorite metaphors for Dowd is Mak, branch. It, and therefore, he, embodies a means to grow out of the rootstock of Yisrael, making a connection between us and the tree of lives. As God's firstborn son, Dowd has Melech, royal lineage and supreme sovereignty. And as a result of being immersed in Yahowah's set-apart spirit as a prophet, Dowd is Malach, thoughtful, considerate, and responsive. He was and remains Yisrael's ideal shepherd and king. One of the many reasons the Messiah is perfect for the job is because he is the most shekel, insightful of men. His shekel, desire for understanding is unsurpassed. When we combine his shekel, intellectual capacity and cerebral acumen with the shekel, instruction and teaching he derived from the Torah, he remains perfectly positioned to shekel, guide Yahowah's sheep. The Torah provides the mishpat, ability to exercise good judgment, and the means to justly resolve disputes. The path to this ideal result is laid out in the Mikra, invitations to be called out and meet with God. They are for our benefit. And when we engage and act upon them, we are deemed Tzadaka, upright and righteous, correct and justified, approved and vindicated in the eyes of God. The day which Yahowah seeks to celebrate above all is Yom Kippurim, the day of reconciliations in year 6000 year. It will begin at sunset in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, 6:22 p.m., October 2nd, 2033. 5 chapters of the Mode, 479 appointments volume of Yada Yahowah are devoted to exploring the magnificent nature of this day. In his day, Bar Yom Hu, Yahweh, Yahudah, beloved of Yah and related to Yah, Jews, will be liberated and saved, Yasha, will be rescued and delivered, Nephil imperfect and, Wah Yisrael, Yisrael, a compound of Ish, individuals, who Sarah, engage and endure with El, God, Israelites, will live and dwell, Shaken, will camp out and reside, Kal imperfect, in confidence, expressing their trust and reliance, La Betach, totally assured and worry-free, safe and secure. And thus, this is, Wazeh, his name, Shem Hu, his personal and proper designation and renown, which, as a benefit of the relationship, Asher, which to show the way to get the most out of life, he will be called, Karahu, he will be summoned, invited, met with, and encountered, he will be proclaimed, read about, and recited, Kal imperfect, literally and eternally, Yahowah is right about our vindication, Yahowah Zadek and Akhu, Yahowah is the means to be right, Yahowah is our acquittal, Yahowah is our righteousness. Yirmiyah, Yah teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:6. It is as it should be. Yahowah is acknowledging Dowd while the son is acknowledging his father. They are great individually, but better together. Dowd volunteered to serve in this way and Yahowah delivered the desired result. Dowd is our Yatzer, savior because Yahowah is Zadek, right. Yahowah will be rescued and liberated, and Israel will thrive and remain by trusting in and relying upon what Daud has done, albeit not alone. This is possible because Yahowah Zadek enacted. With these words, Yahowah has destroyed the credibility of Christianity and Judaism. Peter, Paul and their stooges, Luke, Mark, and Matthew, claimed that, for 480 allegedly having conspired to kill Jesus, Jews had forfeited the opportunity to be saved. Not so. They also claimed that David was dead and buried. Not accurate either. The chosen people will be liberated from the oppressive nature of religion and saved by Father and Son. A remnant will live forevermore. And just so there is no mistaking the object of God's devotion, his flock bears the names Yahowah and Yisrael. God's people are never called Hasidic or Haredim, never called Christians or Muslims, they are never referred to as Babylonians, Assyrians, Philistines, Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Druids, Mayans, Incas, Aztecs, Animists, Africans, Asians, Indians, Europeans, Russians, or Americans, much less Hindus, Roman Catholics, Orthodox Christians, Protestants, Muslims, Mormons, or secular humanists. God is not returning for a church, because he has no interest or association with any such institution. He is not returning for believers or the faithful, because it is only those who know, trust, and rely upon him who will endure. Therefore, Daud is not bringing salvation to any religious or political organization. To be saved, and to live with Yah, we must become, Yahowah, beloved of Yah or Israel, individuals who engage and endure with God. Or both, and we must recognize that Daud is our Savior and King, Yahowah is our God and Father, the Torah is our source of guidance and the Berith is our family. There is no room for replacement theology here, the unsupported notion that the promises made by God to Yahowah and Israel were somehow transferred to the Christian church. There is no accommodation here for the absurd notion of a Jesus Christ. Just as David is the antidote for Christianity and replacement theology, 481 he is what is prescribed to remedy the localized pandemic of Judaism. Moving on to our next illustration of God's plan, we find that the Yatzah, Exodus from Miraim, the crucibles of religious and political oppression served many purposes, one of which was to provide a prophetic portrait of the Yatzah, Exodus from Babylon, religious and political commingling and confusion which will occur as we approach Yom Kippurim in year 6000 year. God is a liberator and mankind's most formidable foe is religion, followed by politics and conspiracy. This realization that Yahowah is an engaged and active advocate of freedom from all manner of human control mechanisms is the first step toward rejecting the religious notion that God must be feared and obeyed. It is also the first step toward the covenant and serves as its lone prerequisite. The first statement Yahowah etched in stone upon the first of the two tablets underscores this unpopular reality. Then Almighty God conveyed all of these statements in our presence, providing perspective, saying and explaining, Shem 20:1. I am Yahowah, your God, who, relationally and beneficially, to show the correct path to get the most out of life, brought you out of and delivered you from the place of political and religious oppression, out of the house of slavery, the place of worship and servitude, of bondage and working for one's salvation. Shemoth 20:2, you will not continue to exist with other, different or additional, gods over and above my presence. Shemoth, names, Exodus 23. In his second of three statements, Yahowah overtly condemns religion, telling us that it is the way fathers 482 corrupt their children. The religious pandemic would be so pervasive and deadly, at the conclusion of this, the middle statement on the first of two tablets, God revealed that thousands and not millions, would be saved. Thousands among billions are just 1 in a million. Should you choose to be one of them, Yahowah wants you to know that, while he was once known for having rescued his people from Miraim, upon his return, he will be celebrated for having rescued his family from a different locale. Therefore, Laken, behold, Hine, a time is coming, Yamim Bo, prophetically declares Yahowah, Naam Yahowah, when they will no longer say, Wa lo amar od, Yahowah lives who raised, Che Yahowah Asher Allah, the children of Yisrael, Eth ben Yisrael, out of the realm of religious and political oppression, Meneres Miraim, Yirmiyah 23:7, but instead as, Kym, Yahowah lives who raised, Che Yahowah Asher Allah, and who, for the benefit of the relationship, returned, Wa Asher Bo, for the descendants. Eth Zerah, of the family of Yisrael, Beth Yisrael, from the land to the north, Meneres Zaphan, out of the realm of the hidden treasures those who are observant, from Zaphan, to be valued, Zapha, to closely examine and carefully consider and own, all things pertaining to, and away from, Wamin, all of the places, Churl Ha-Eres, where I had scattered and banished them there by name, Asher Nadakhem Shem. Then they shall live and remain, Yashab, upon their own soil, Alad Armahem. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yah, Jeremiah 23:8. Therefore, let it be known, there will be a second Yatzah, Exodus, this one occurring during the time of Jacob's troubles. As was the case 3,468 years ago, Yahowah is coming to liberate the children of Israel from the places they are being oppressed by religion, politics, and conspiracy. 483 The overwhelming preponderance of diaspora Jews currently reside north of Israel, over 95%, particularly in the United States, Canada, Europe, and Russia. Moreover, there are hundreds of thousands of ethnic Israelites around the Caspian Sea, which is where the 10 lost tribes were taken by the Assyrians long ago. However, beyond geography, by using Zarphon, God may also be saying that those who return will be highly valued hidden treasures who are observant. That is the good news, but it comes with a strong dose of reality. The reason Yahowah revealed that there would only be as few as 1 in a million souls sufficiently liberated from religion, politics, and conspiracy to be saved is that Malachi was the last of the prophets. Without a Yahweh to work with and through, there has been no communication with Israel in 2,450 years. We are doing our best to make up for lost time and are hopeful that Yahweh will start paying attention. This is now Jeremiah reacting to what he has seen while witnessing the future. Concerning the prophets, Lahanabim, regarding those who speak for God, my thoughts are grieved, and my heart is broken, Shabalab Eni, I am distressed and crushed, within me, Barkireb Eni. My essential essence, Shurletzameni, is shaken, Rachef. I am like, Hayakar, an inebriated individual, Ishikawa, similar to a man, Wakage bear, intoxicated by wine, Obar Huyain, because of the appearance Minpana, from the presence, of Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching, and because of the presence, Wa Minpana, of his set-apart words, Dabar Kodesh Hu, the special and unique, separating, statements and message. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:9. 484 One of the last prophets was grieved that there would be no more prophets. The realization that the entire community would turn away from Yahowah to pursue personal interests, politics and religion, was so disorienting, so difficult to process, he equated the effect it was having on him as inebriating and intoxicating. I understand his bewilderment and frustration. God revealed himself to Israel and Yahweh in their language, miraculously intervening on their behalf, and in response, they chose to act like Gentiles. Yahowah proved his existence and the reliability of his Torah and prophets by detailing every important aspect of Israel's remote past and distant future, only to have his people compose their own Talmudic Torah and forget his name. From Malachi to the present day, there would not be a single Yahweh willing to engage with God on behalf of the people. It got so bad, Yahowah chose a Gai to convey and clarify the message the Hebrew prophets had shared long ago, making their words pertinent today. Nonetheless, no matter how well intended and spiritually supported, the success of Yada Yahowah will be measured by the quality, not the quantity, of qualified individuals. I say this based upon the prophet's portrait of what he is seeing in Yahowah's presence upon his return. The set-apart words of the prophets, even when amplified and explained, will not have awakened enough Yahweh to elicit a positive response from Yirmiyah, although I suspect the opposite is true with Yahowah. From the beginning, he has consistently chosen one over many. With rare exceptions, when the prophets speak of naf, adultery, they are bemoaning the nation's propensity to cheat on God by being religious and chasing after gods of man's making. They are not criticizing marriage, monogamy, or sexuality. The marriage vows we are most familiar with, forsaking all others, until death do us part, are unsupported in the Torah, where there are 485 no vows, polygamy is common, and divorce is as simple as writing a letter. Indeed, the earth, ha-eres, the land and material realm, is filled with, male, is replete, satisfied, and content with, perfect, religious adultery, naf, with those who are unfaithful to the covenant, engaging in illicit relationships with false deities, participle, the object of the religious adultery is being demonstrably cheated upon. Therefore, because of, the presence of this curse, Panah, the appearance of the harmful nature of these binding oaths and lamentable sworn testimony, the earth, ha-eres, the land and material realm, is despondent, is drying up, dejected and languid. The dwelling places, nor, the pastures, settlements and abodes, where the word is questioned, midbar, the desolate wilderness of the questionable message, a compound of to question and dabar, word, are paralyzed and withering away, yabish, are shriveling up and desolate, perfect, and, their course of action, whereby they use oppression and extortion to facilitate their wayward lifestyle while running away, baruz are their illicit financial dealings where money is stolen by those in power, religious and political authorities, to fund misguided and impulsive ways of living, is, and continues to be completely, higher, exists as, scribed in the Kal stem, which tells us that the subject, which is the oppressive extortion, has and will actually occur. And imperfect Vov consecutive, which affirms that this choice of behavior will eventually cease even though its consequences will endure, wrong, ra, evil, wicked, distressful, disastrous, troubling, misfortunate, and harmful, and their use of power, influence, and authority, Dabarym, their religious supremacy, 486 political, economic, and military might, is not right, honest, or trustworthy, lo ken, is not valid, correct, just, or justified. Yirmiyah, Yeh teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:10. God is criticizing religious leaders as well as the institutions which empower them. He is upset that they are promoting false gods and says that, as a consequence, the world has become a wasteland in which most people shrink away from his word. Of special interest, we must recognize that God is particularly displeased with the propensity of religious leaders to fund their often lavish lifestyles by extorting money from the masses and by oppressing those they claim to serve. God has put us on notice. Their illicit financial dealings and way of life are not right, honest, or trustworthy. And this problem is not partial or limited but, instead, pervasive and complete. Pay them, listen to them, and follow them at your own risk. That said, there is a subtle truth revealed in this passage. One of the reasons the masses buy into religion is that most promise that they will see their loved ones again in heaven. So, it is in the mourning for the dead that the living are beguiled. In that naf, adultery is a common metaphor. It is instructive to see that it is wielded against religion, not sexuality. The Allah curse which has filled the earth is Allah, illicit relationships with false gods, especially Allah and Jesus Christ. The oaths of allegiance, so common among the religious and political, the patriotic and militaristic, are lamentable according to God. Midbar is routinely translated as wilderness, but there is more to this desolate environment. The realization that Midbar is a compound of my, to question, and Dabar, word, explains why such places are lifeless, and according to God, such religious curses are Yabish, 487 paralyzing, causing the faithful's soul to shrivel up and wither away. Reinforcing the realization that Yahowah is continuing to bemoan religion, he speaks of it as being maruzah, oppressive and extortionary, which is something only the empowered can accomplish. And in this regard, Jews have been extorted and persecuted by Christianity and Islam for centuries. But the fact remains, when it comes to illicit financial dealings, nobody holds a candle to the rabbis. They are especially good at being bad. Their abuse of power and authority has always been wrong. There is no justifying anything they have done. But should you suspect that singling out religious leaders in particular but also political potentates was unjustified, consider this. Indeed, surely and truly, the prophet, Nabi, the person who claims to speak on behalf of a deity, in addition to, Gam, the priest, Kohen, the religious official and ruler, the cleric and minister, the royal advisor and priesthood, are defiled and godless, Shenef, are filthy, morally corrupt, internally polluted, crooked, spineless, wavering, and ungodly. And even, Gam, in, Bar my house, Bethany, my home, speaking of the promised land I have found, Massa, I have discovered sufficient evidence to determine that, they are evil, Rahem, they are wrong, wicked, and disastrous, troubling, miserable, and harmful, prophetically declares, Naum, affirms in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yah, Jeremiah 23:11. 488 There is no denying that these false prophets and irresponsible priests are religious leaders. Therefore, God's indictment is focused upon the sectarian establishment. That, however, does not exonerate politicians because for most of human history religious and political power has been inseparable. Even today in nations which feign separation of church and state, most candidates draw their support from religious constituents. In America, the Republican Party and Christianity are wed, just as socialist secular humanism has become ingrained within the Democratic Party, and progressives are Marxists. We must therefore conclude, at least according to God, that those most intent upon appearing godly are ungodly. Those who pretend to be moral are among the most immoral. Religion, rather than being a source of good which leads believers to God, is a bastion of evil, where the foolish and faithful are led astray. According to Yahowah, religion is wrong. God views the beliefs of man as detestable and miserable. As a result, likewise, Laken, so much more so then, their way, Derikhem, their path, will be for them, Hayalahem, will continuously come to exist for them, Kal imperfect, like, Ka, the promise of empty and unfulfilled words, nothing but false hope, Shulaklak, a slippery slope and a treacherous walk into the realm of falsehood and flattery, from a repetition of chalak, dividing a spoil while reallocating something stolen, redistributing wealth by plundering others, away from the light and into the darkness, Baha'u'llah, concealed and disappearing, ceasing to exist while coming to a calamitous and misfortunate end, they will be thrust down as a punishment, Dachik, they will be cast down, Nephil imperfect, while being diminished, Wanafil, going from a higher position to a much lower one, losing control and falling prostrate, by it, Bahai. 489 Yes, KY, rest assured, I will bring I will return and pursue, Hyphil imperfect, misfortune upon them, Ra al-Hem, distress, misery, and suffering over them and their evil companions, errant associates, misleading shepherds, and depraved citizens, the year, Shana, the time of change and transformation, of their appointed judgment and punishment, Pekehem, of reckoning, of exercising authority and assigning responsibility which results in imposing a penalty whereby they are placed into custody. Prophetically declares, Naum, affirms in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:12. God is fair? Those whose empty words and slimy ways have caused so many to fall will stumble into the pit of darkness. The clerics and kings who have forced others to bow down before them will ultimately find themselves prostrate before God in judgment. Those who sought to elevate themselves by demeaning others will be cast down. The miserable misfortune of divine punishment awaits the advocates of religion and politics, their just recompense for having misled so many for so long. God is light, Sohar Apollo, the darkness represents total separation from Yer. Shaul is, therefore, exceedingly similar to a black hole. And because being separated from God is the greatest plague of all, Ha Apollo was used to describe the final judgment before Passover, there will be a darkness, Apollo, over the land of religious and political oppression, a darkness, Apollo, which will be felt, in the realm of Miraim for 3 days. The fact that this statement began with Laken makes the punishment fit the crime, a quid pro quo. This is simply the consequence of religion. 490 Shalaklak is a telling term. By using it, God is affirming that religion is nothing more than false hope, and thus the squandering of one's life. Judaism, like Christianity, is predicated upon a litany of Shalaklak, empty and unfulfilling words. Faith is the slippery slope into the darkness. The realization that Shalaklak is based upon a repetition of Chalak demonstrates Yahowah's adversity to redistributing wealth, as opposed to creating it, as well as to plundering the productive. Advancing these notions is what fuels liberal politics. Being thrust down into the darkness and diminished as a punishment is the fate of all who promote or impose their religion. Their victims will cease to exist while the perpetrators will get an eternity to consider the consequences of their crimes. The time of judgment is quickly approaching. Mankind's reckoning with God will occur between October 2nd and 7th, 2033. And you do not want to be among those judged. At that point, there will be only 2 options, the cessation of one's soul or its eternal incarceration. Should you be interested in the third option, that of life within the covenant, you will need to act before it's too late. You and I have been afforded 3 options. We can follow the religious and political to our mutual demise. Men and women have done so through compulsion or choice for the past 6,000 years, all without benefit. We can step aside and listen to Yahowah, then accept what he is offering and asking in return. Or we can promote the abhorrent foolishness Yahowah detests and earn his condemnation for having misled his flock. Among the prophets, Wabar Nabi, with those who claim to speak for God, of Shomaran, those who are observers, capital city of the northern 491 kingdom, transliterated Samaria, from Shema, to observe and own, all things pertaining to it, I have seen, Ra, I am witnessing, something repulsive, foolish and abhorrent, Tifla, an unseemly and stupid prayer, an attempt to whitewash something offensive and criminal in nature, an unsavory smear campaign, a fool's folly and impious proposition. They claim to be divinely inspired, Nobba, they convey messages on behalf of their gods, by the Lord, Baha Baal, by the Master, Controller, Owner, and One who possesses, the God of Babylon. They have led my people, Yisrael, astray, deceiving the nation, Watahth Ameneth Yisrael, they have misled my family, those I'm seeking to liberate and empower, causing them to vacillate, and wander away, Hyphil imperfect. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:13. Tiflo was rendered correctly. God views the religious as repulsive and abhorrent, indeed, stupid and foolish, offensive and unsavory. Should you count yourself among them, and should you be offended by Yahowah's assessment, you may want to think this through. The title Nabi, prophet is similar to Elohim, gods in that some are authentic, but most are fraudulent impostors. Clerics and kings have claimed divine inspiration and authorization for as long as there have been communities of people to deceive and control. They have promoted a continuum of manipulative and demanding, intrusive lords by a plethora of names: Baal and Bel, Amen-Ra and Osiris, Adonis and Dionysus, Mithras and Christus, Zeus and Jesus. Common among these myths has been the need to obey and worship these gods, to submit to them and bow before them, to pray to them and pay them. A lot has been given, indeed taken, and nothing ever returned. 492 among the least credible to have been afforded the title prophet is Muhammad on behalf of his wannabe god, Allah. And yet, Islam's pedophile and rapist, warmongering terrorist and thief, failed to offer a single accurate prediction. And that is the common thread among all false prophets. Accurately predicting future events has never been the strong suit of lords and their stooges. Even the most infamous of them, Paul and Muhammad, never got so much as one right. The same can be said for the long legacy of rabbis, including Akiba, Shammai, Judah Hanasi, Saadia Gaon, Shimon Bar Yochai, Hillel, Napahar, Ravashi, Maimonides, Narmanides, or the infamous Baal Shem Tov, who is Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer. Fact is, apart from the 40 men and women who spoke for Yahowah, and who wrote down what God inspired them to reveal between 3,450 and 2,450 years ago, there are no other actual prophets. There is not another credible example of a religious deity inspiring any cleric to accurately present something which occurred in the distant past or remote future. Not one. The landscape is instead littered with laughable fables and foolish myths. And yet with Yahowah, there are thousands of prophetic statements, all precisely detailed, all committed to writing, all of which have materialized as predicted or are on the cusp of occurring before our very eyes. Thousands of credible affirmations without a single miscue. This comparison is so stark it requires a level of stupidity beyond credulity to favor the myths over reality. And yet, as a testament to mankind's propensity to mislead, even in the best of times, those who knew and trusted the one telling the truth were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1 by those who acquiesced to the lies. 493 Very few people have known and loved Yahowah. Throughout the history of religion, even to the present day, speaking for and praying to Baal, the Lord has been the common denominator of human belief systems. But why? Lords are not worth knowing. Lords seek status, they lord over others. They own and control. They possess. It is for these reasons that Yahowah affords this distinction to Satan, the adversary. Satan, known to God as Baal, the Lord, wants to be worshipped as a god, seen as above God. His desire is to control people's lives, to deceive them and lead them away from Yahowah and to himself. Baal, the Lord, is the god of religion, and always has been, from Miraim to Assyria, from the Philistines to the Babylonians, from the Greeks to the Romans, and then from the Roman Catholics to the Muslims. The Lord has consistently taken everything and offered nothing. Yahowah takes nothing and offers everything. And so, God bemoans. Among those who claim to speak for God, Wabar Nabi, of Shomarown, the capital of Israel, Shomarown, I have seen, Ra, something repulsive, foolish and abhorrent, unseemly stupid prayers, an attempt to whitewash that which is offensive, an unsavory smear campaign, a fool's folly, and impious proposition, Tifla. They claim to be divinely inspired, Nobba, by Baal, the Lord, Baal. Thereby, they have led my people, Israel, astray, deceiving the nation, Watahth Amneth Israel. Yirmiyah 23:13. While there is no excuse for being religious, at least there is a glimmer of hope in these words. Even to the bitter end, Yahowah is concerned for his people, for Israel. He has not abandoned them, although they have abandoned him. 494 Replacing Yahowah's name with Baal, the Lord, is the single most deceptive, destructive, deadly, and damning crime ever perpetrated by those claiming to speak on behalf of God. But this malady was not limited to Samaria, Israel. It was also occurring in the heart of Yahweh, as cleric and king formed an ungodly alliance. Also among Wabar, Yahushalem, source of teaching and guidance on restoration and reconciliation, transliterated Jerusalem, prophets, Nabi, those who claim divine authorization and inspiration, I have seen, Ra, eyewitness, an abomination which is horrible and shocking, Sharora, something terribly defiling akin to a ravaging and tempestuous storm. They are unfaithful and commit religious adultery, Naf. They engage in illicit relationships with false deities, Kal infinitive. They are defined by having actually and demonstrably cheated on the covenant, and they walk, Waholak, in the lie, Wahasheka, in fraudulent and misleading deception, by vainly and egotistically uttering false and useless delusions without merit or reason. So they become powerful by empowering, Wachazak, They use extremely harsh and severe tactics to gain control by strengthening the hands Yod, the influence and control of miserable and errant co-conspirators, Ra, of evil associates and harmful countrymen, of the vexing and injurious, displeasing and hurtful who are good for nothing, such that not a single, La Bilthi, so that without exception, through disassociation, there isn't one, individual, each, person, turns away, Shub, is willing or able to change, Kal perfect, from his perverse countrymen and errant associations, Min Rahu, from his ruinous and corrupt companions. 495 To me, La, according to me, all of them, Shel Hem, have become, higher, they were, are, and continue to be, like, Kar, the same as, Sodom, Sodom, scorched, and they live, Yashab high, they dwell and remain, like, Kar, similar to, Gomorrah, Amorah, where tyrants manipulate the people, treating them as merchandise and slaves. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yeh, Jeremiah 23:14. Throughout time, religious and political leaders have allied to authenticate and empower one another. The cleric claims that the king was authorized by God and the king forces everyone to submit to the cleric's religious authority. There is no better example of this ungodly abomination than Catholicism's Holy Roman Empire. It's sad but nonetheless true, many of the world's most popular religions flow out of Jerusalem. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Socialist Secular Humanism are all examples of doctrines inspired by Jewish religious leaders. Collectively, they have embittered and poisoned the world with their insincere hypocrisy and ungodliness. Speaking specifically of religious leaders, God compares their dissatisfaction with his covenant, their lies, their quest for power, and their wicked behavior as he saw Sodom and Gomorrah. And you know what he did to them. But now that you know that God is always consistent, you may not want to stand too close to a church, synagogue, or mosque. Yerushalayim, Jerusalem is a compound of Yara, the verb which defines Torah's guidance and teaching, and Shalom, addressing the reconciliation and restoration of a relationship. It is the only city on earth that God values and claims as his own. Men have also set their sights on Jerusalem as it became the prize of religious aspirants and political tyrants, including those seeking the status of high priest and 496 king. No doubt it caught the attention of Vespasian, Titus, and Hadrian and gave rise to Paul and Akiba. Muhammad's claims are easily the most entertaining. Following the satanic verses, Muhammad, after accepting sex, power, and money to recognize the leading goddesses of the rock pile of rock gods known as the Kaaba, excused his sojourn into paganism by announcing in the Quran that all of Allah's prophets speak on behalf of Satan. While that was true, it was a little sketchy, so Allah's messenger, needing to bolster his fledgling credibility, came up with the following story, one which inspires Satan's dimwits to this day. Muhammad claimed, no doubt sober, that while sleeping with a child, he was 53 and the girl was 6, this bastion of morality was flown atop a wild ass from his bedroom in Mecca to the temple in Jerusalem. Mind you, asses don't fly, there was no temple in Jerusalem at the time, and there hadn't been one since it was destroyed by the Romans 540 years earlier. But let's not let the facts get in the way of a bad story. Once in Jerusalem following the night's journey, the mighty Mo scheduled appointments with all of the Hebrew bigwigs of the past, including Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, David, and Isa, whom he claimed was Jesus, unaware that he never existed. After the powwows, the prophet saddled the winged ass and leapt up to the heavens, leaving a hoofy print to mark the spot that the dome of the rock would commemorate, as a trophy to Muslim gullibility. No doubt telling the truth, Allah's preferred pedophile and terrorist passed through hell on the way to heaven. When he asked why it was filled with women hanging from meat hooks placed lovingly through their breasts, methinks he may have had mommy issues, he was told that they 497 were insufficiently grateful to the Muslim men who had abused them. Then leaping aboard El Barak, the winged ass, Islam's most acclaimed asshole made his way through the heavens, from the first to the seventh, with inspiring stories told all along the way. Once there, Allah's messenger boy was granted an audience with his god, Satan, known to Muslims as Allah. Doing his best to impersonate Habail, the Islamic lord said that he wanted every Muslim to bow to him 50 times a day, nose in the dirt and asses in the air. To which, Allah's messenger argued was too big a burden for Muslims, tasked as they would be terrorizing the world and murdering Jews. So, he asked for a reduction in prostrations. That is the story. It is the reason Muslims claim Jerusalem as their third holiest site today and are eager to masquerade as Fakestinian terrorists in Fakestein, ever ready to murder anyone who denies their claim to Jerusalem based upon their prophet's totally rad adventure. With an ego as big as Satan, Shaul, whom Christians know as Paul, wouldn't need the flying ass. But nonetheless, he too would claim to have visited the seventh heaven. His remarkable story is told at the conclusion of his second letter to the Corinthians. It is actually worth the read because the wannabe apostle, like Allah's messenger, admitted to being demon-possessed, affirming that they knew that their Lord was, indeed, Satan. Methinks both of these tall tales serve as worthy candidates for Towrah, a shocking and senseless abomination. And yet, between Islam and Christianity, 4 billion people prefer the stalwart testimony of these charlatans to anything Yahowah has to say. Perhaps that is why committing religious adultery is akin to Holak Bar HaSheker, walking in a lie following egotistical delusions without reason or benefit. 498 The realization that billions have been willing to die and kill for such utter nonsense is bewildering, especially since they won't invest a moment to consider what Yahowah, who just so happens to be God, had to say. As a result, a evil association was formulated between Chazak Yod, those empowering one another. The result was so vexing and injurious, so debilitating, that La Bilthi Ish, no one, not a single solitary soul, was shub, willing or able to turn away from the perverse and corrupting notions of their fellow countrymen. The conniving co-conspirators, the Lord's legions, prevailed over the Almighty, corrupting the earth such that it would come to resemble Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is why it will all be incinerated upon Yahowah's return, leaving nothing, including their stigma and stench. It should be obvious, but let's not take any chances with this one since it did not turn out favorably for Sodom or Gomorrah. There is only one paradigm capable of corrupting everyone the world over, religion. This known, while I am saddened for Yahowah, as he deserves better, I am grateful for the opportunity to reverse the damage. Even if we only make a small dent in the overbearing facades of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Socialist Secular Humanism, it will have been worth the effort. And had there been a Yisraelite willing to engage on behalf of the Almighty, God would likely have chosen him or her over a Gowie. Just guessing, but I suspect that this is not what you expected to hear from the Almighty when you picked up this introduction to God, especially if this is the first volume of the Yada Yahowah series that you have read. But at least now, you know that what I've shared with you, as unpopular as it may be, is consistent with Yahowah's appraisal of his creation. 499 The very people who would have the faithful believe that they have earned a special place with God will be judged and condemned by him. As a result, therefore, this is what, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher existence, of the vast array of spiritual envoys, Zaba, of the command and control regime of implements who serve by following orders, says, Amar, in opposition to, against and over, those who claim to speak for God, Nabi, the prophets. Behold, be aware, I will cause them to consume, Hakaleth will feed and destroy them with, hyphal participle, this unpleasant and bitter curse, Lana, the degrading nature of their response and the affliction associated with their answers. Then I will cause them to drink, Washakehem, I will furnish a portion of, hyphal perfect, poisonous, rosh, venomous and deadly, depicting that which comes from the head of the snake, water, maim. This is because, from, min, and out of, these prophets, Nabi, of Yahushalem, the source of guidance on reconciliation, comes forth, Yatsa, is brought out and emerges, wicked profanity, vile corruption, insincere hypocrisy, and complete godlessness, Chanyapha, that which is unclean, defiled, polluted, unreliable, and hypocritical, to all, La Shurl, the earth, Ha-Eres, the material world. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:15. Recompense is real. Yahowah intends to hold the religious accountable. And to do so, he will feed them what they have asked others to consume, drinking down their own medicine. 500 inches Amos, Amos 5:7, presents a transition from judgment to lana, unpleasant bitterness for those who walk away from that which is right, righteous, and vindicating. It is the consequence of what they have done to poison others. More telling still, in Dabarym, Deuteronomy 29:18, we read a warning which conveys the result of turning to fake gods, like those found in Miriam and Babylon, even in Islam and Christianity. Let there not be among you a man, woman, family member, or tribe whose heart turns away this day from Yahowah, our God, to go and to serve the gods of these foreign nations, lest there be among you a root which bears poison, rosh, and unpleasant bitterness, lana, that which is irritating, noxious, and poisonous. The benefit of being enlightened by the Torah, engaging in the covenant, and answering Yahowah's invitations to meet is being adopted into his family and living forever with our Heavenly Father in his home. But the consequence of leading people away from this wonderful outcome by embittering and poisoning them with Chanyapha, wicked profanity, vile corruption, insincere hypocrisy, and complete godlessness of religion will be to consume the poison which has been doled out and thereby endure a steady diet of unpleasantness and bitterness. God is just, so he will and must punish those who have led his people astray, those who have poisoned them with vile religious notions. And while that is fair, this penalty does not provide restitution nor reconcile those whom they have misled away from God. So don't let them separate you. Walk away from them. Don't listen to them. Never rely upon their promises. Leave all traces of your religion behind. But don't take my word on this, listen to Yah. This is what, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah, of the spiritual implements 501 Zaba says, Amar, do not listen, Lo Shama, do not pay any attention, Kal imperfect, speaking of the actual and unfolding consequences of this advice, concerning the words, speeches, statements, and messages, Al-Dabar, of those prophets, Ha-Nabi, who claim to speak for God and prophesy, Ha-Nabi, who insist they are authorized and inspired by God regarding their message to you, La-Atam. They, are vain, worthless, and delusional liars arrogantly providing false hope, Shibal, the presumptuous promote that which is untrue and unreliable, making them of no value, as their promises are utterly meaningless, empty, and futile, to you, Atom, for you all. Their words and the statements they speak, Dabar, their communications and messages, reveal, Kazon, provide a window into, their hearts and minds, their character and thinking, Labhem, their inner nature, attitude, judgment, desires, motivations, and ambitions, and are not from, Lo Min, the mouth of, Pei, Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching. Yirmiyah, revere and respect Yah, Jeremiah 23:16. There is no more apt depiction of a religious cleric than this. Too bad Martin Luther didn't nail God's declaration to the church door. And while that is a valid assessment, Yahowah was actually describing rabbis and denouncing their Talmud. It is just that one shoe fits all of those who trip up the unsuspecting. And in truth, Martin Luther was too busy being an anti-Semitic pig to be bothered citing something Yahowah revealed about him and his ilk. Religious faith has always been, and will forever be, nothing more than false hope. God does not want his people to listen to anything a religious person has to say, ever. 502. And then, after telling us that we should never listen to a religious cleric, God tells us why. They speak for themselves, revealing their hearts and minds, and not for Yahowah. If you want to know what God thinks, consider what Yirmiyah or Yeshaya have to say, or Moses or Daud if you prefer. Those who insist that they speak for God, don't. Examples include Rabbi Akiba, the founder of Judaism, Paul, the founder of Christianity, and Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Today's popes, who claim to be infallible as God's authorized agents, are delusional liars. God speaks for himself and quite articulately, I might add. He revealed the Torah in his own voice, and his prophets scribed the words which came from his mouth. And since it is germane to what you are reading, I do not speak for God but, instead, of God. His prophets spoke for him, and I strive to convey their message such that it resonates today. Still speaking of religious leaders, Yeh says. They continuously say, Amar Amar, they preach and they promise, they declare and they pontificate, and they boast without ceasing, Kal participle Kal infinitive, to those who spurn and slander me, who disregard and despise me, La Natseni, to those who treat me with contempt, who demean my status, who treat me disrespectfully and who discard what I have to say, who blaspheme me and act as if I no longer matter, Peel participle, regarding the very word and the message of, Dabar, the instructions, accounts, and promises of, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, Shalom Hayalatam, peace be unto you, Shalom Hayalatam. 503. But they all walk, Washol Holok, in the stubbornness of their heart, Basharuf Lab Hu, devoted to their ambitions, resolutely adhering to their own ideas, and in the firmness of their convictions, refusing to change. They claim, Amar, they say, miserable suffering from such associations, Ra, the consequence of evil shepherding, will not come upon you, Lobo Alatam, you will not be included in or returned to. Yirmiyah, Yeh lifts up, Jeremiah 23:17. When a Hebrew word is repeated, as is the case with Amar Amar, the meaning and message is intensified exponentially. So, this is preaching, promising, and pontificating ad nauseum. Moreover, in the first instance, Amar was scribed in the Kal stem, which affirms that this problem is real, not hypothetical. Then by using the participle form, which serves as a verbal adjective, we learn that the preacher and his preaching, the rabbi and his rant, the priest and his promises, the pope and his pontifications, and the imam and his instructions, are all inseparable. God is exposing and condemning the men as well as their message. Further, in the second instance, the reality of the Kal stem is underscored, as is the association between the perpetrator and their pontifications. This time Amar was scribed using the infinitive absolute which serves as a verbal noun. This conjugation thereby subjects both the cleric and their claims to Yahowah's judgment. It serves as an indictment of Jew and Judaism, Christian and Christianity, Muslim and Islam, as well as the secular politician, and their socialist secular humanist agenda. It is worth noting, Yahowah commends those who shama, listen. He ignores those who do not. And God condemns those who amar, talk as if their words matter. 504 Nats, translated as those who spurn and slander, disregard and despise, God, was written using the peel stem. This tells us that there is a relationship being implied between the subject, in this case those who reject Yahowah's testimony, and the action of the verb which is being spurned, and disregarded. The message: if a person devalues Yahowah's Torah, as Christians do with their New Testament, as Jews do with their Talmud, and as Muslims do with their Quran, then that person will be spurned and rejected by God. It's fair. A true quid pro quo. Nats is an all-encompassing verb and, thus, conveys the full array of inappropriate responses to Yahowah. Most people simply disregard him in favor of more popular and accommodating gods. But many consciously reject him because his testimony has to be discarded for their religion to prevail. However, there are those who actually despise Yah sufficiently to openly compete against him. The Talmud, New Testament, and Quran are all classic examples of tomes where men's accounts take precedence over Yahowah's word. Up to this point, God has been overtly critical of religious leaders, particularly the shepherds and spokesmen of Judaism. But now he is also indicting the faithful because the rabbis are speaking to those who spurn and slander me. Knowing that these wayward people would greet one another by saying Shalom Hayalatam, peace be unto you, as is the custom between Jews, God revealed that their religion would bring the opposite result, Ra, misfortune and misery. According to God, religion is the opposite of what it pretends, bringing the opposite result of what it promises. Even though Yahowah is continuing to express his disdain for Judaism to encourage his people to walk away from it and trust him instead, this indictment is also suited 505 for Islam. While Muslims errantly protest that Islam means peace when it actually means submission, theirs is mankind's deadliest religion. Additionally, they habitually repeat, peace be unto him after every reference to Muhammad when Islam's founder was a ruthless terrorist and warmonger. Unable to give Muslims a reason to live, he gave them reasons to die. Returning to the ills of Judaism for a moment, the Haredim claim that there is no Shaul, but God is saying the opposite. Those who provide false hope will suffer in association with other evil shepherds. There will be recompense. By excluding Yahowah from their lives, by listening to rabbis instead of God, religious Jews remain isolated and estranged. By contrast, KY, rather instead, which who, of them was present, a mod, of them was appointed, assigned, or could even endure standing, in the council of, Barsaud, in the company and council so as to be confided in, intimately trusted by, consulted with and relied upon, developing an intimate fellowship with through a close personal relationship as a confidant of, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher, existence, and has seen, Wara, has been shown. Witnessed, perceives, has considered, finds delight in, Kalimperfect, actually and consistently viewing, or heard, Shama, and listened to, Kalimperfect, his word, Eth Dabarym, his message. Who, among them, has paid attention and responded to, Kazab, of them was sufficiently alert and attentive to perceive, his word, Dabarym, his message, communication, and testimony, and, has genuinely and consistently listened, Shama, has 506 actually and consistently paid attention, Kalimperfect. Yirmiyah, respect Yahowah, Jeremiah 23:18. Those Yahowah calls into his confidence, those he confides in and trusts, all share something in common. We look at and Shama, listen to the Dabar, word of God before we speak. And because we strive to kashab, be alert, attentive, and perceptive, we are motivated to Shama, listen all the more. To an infinite degree, God is smarter and more experienced than the best of us. So, between now and the time he empowers, enlightens, and enriches us exponentially as a result of the covenant, ultimately placing his Torah, guidance within us, the relationship works best when he teaches and we learn. And yet, this disparity between the qualifications of God and man has not been sufficient to dissuade religious men from pretending to speak on behalf of God. But be aware, God is aware. And he is not pleased with the arrogance and insolence of the religious. Behold, pay attention, the storm, Sarah, of Yahowah, displeasure and fury, Kema, hostility and antagonism, anger, wrath, and rage, shall go forth, Yatsa, will be brought out. A swirling, Shaul, a rotating whirlwind of, storm of destructive force, Sar, will be brought to bear, Shaul, will whirl around, against the leaders who are the source, al-Rosh, upon their heads inception, and sum total, of that which is wrong, Raza, of the unrighteous and ungodly, evil, the errant and condemned. Yirmiyah 23:19. Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher, existence, anger, frustration and resentment, will not return, lo shub, will not materialize or come back, 507 until, he is actually done working, asar he has acted and engaged and has reliably completed doing everything which needs to be done, kal infinitive construct, which affirms the reliability and genuineness of this promise, and also, as a verbal noun, that Yahowah this work are demonstrable and inseparable, and until, he takes his stand on behalf of, establishes, confirms, and validates, honors and fulfills, hyphal infinitive, the decisions and plans, mazima, the purposes, discretion, and thoughts, in addition to the careful, prudent, and judicious choices of his heart, lab of his inner nature and character, of his thinking and judgment. In, the last, Akarith, days, Hayam, free of all competing influences, you will come to this realization and comprehend, on your own initiative, you will have the capacity to grasp this instruction, processing this information independently and intelligently, thinking freely and prudently, hit pale stem and imperfect conjugation, speaking of how this realization will have unfolding consequences for those who think independently, this by, Bahai. Making the proper associations and connections to grow from knowing to understanding by being discerning and discriminating, by thoughtfully and rationally evaluating these revelations and insights. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:20. God is going to allow man, through his religious schemes, to corrupt his word and fool the unwary right up until the last day, and then, and only then will he respond. This destroys the notions that God is engaged in protecting the reliability of Bible translations, and that God is actively judging, even punishing, those he does not respect. While he will do both things, he's not doing either now. Both realizations are devastating blows to religion and those who advocate them. 508 But more than debunking these pervasive religious myths, Yahowah has told all who would listen that he, working alongside his Son, is going to do all of the work required to validate and fulfill his plans and promises. Moreover, these acts and this result will be wholly consistent with his character and nature and will unfold on his schedule, on a timeline which includes a period of time known as the last days. We are on the cusp of it now. With these words we discover that, during the last days, God's people will finally come to realize and understand his plan, his timeline, and the stand he took to achieve his purpose. Moreover, we achieve this result by carefully observing the information he has provided, then processing it logically. We not only can know, we will know. When we consider this in context, making the kinds of connections Bin encourages, we realize that God is saying that we will eventually appreciate the reasons he is opposed to religion and the religious. After all, Judaism's advocates have been the subject of his ire for quite some time. Rest assured, Yahowah is going to come down hard against the rabbis and those who have supported them. Bin and Bina are spectacular Hebrew concepts, revealing that the process we should use to grow from knowing to understanding is to make the proper associations and connections. This includes being discerning and discriminating such that we recognize common characteristics and ascertain common denominators. To be rational, we must learn how to filter truth from fiction, good from bad, and right from wrong, and then apply those lessons to the bigger picture of life itself. An example would be to see how the covenant's benefits are fulfilled by the first 4 invitations. Then we can associate the fulfillment of the Mikra to Yahowah's 509 timeline, and know when Father and Son will return. Another would be to perceive how the conditions of the Berith are underscored by the 3 statements Yahowah wrote on the first of 2 tablets. Making the connection between Beith, family and Berith, covenant is also telling as is developing in appreciation of how Mai and Kara work together to explain Mikra. If you go to a synagogue, church, mosque, or classroom expecting to be told the truth, beware. I did not send, lo shalak, I did not authorize or dispatch, these prophets, Nabi, these individuals who claim that they were inspired to speak for God, and so they, Wahem, will be quickly dispatched and driven away, Ruse, they will be pursued and chased away. I did not speak to them, lo Dabar Elhem, I did not communicate my word to them. And yet, they, Wahem, spoke as if they were inspired, Nabi, acted as if they were prophets, claiming to reveal God's message. Yirmiyah 23:21. But, if, they had been present, Amod, in my counsel, Saudeni, engaged in an intimate fellowship with me, coming to trust and rely upon me in my counsel, then they would have heard, Shama, my words, Dabar Eni, my message, 2, 4 and alongside, my family, Ameni, my people. They would have returned, having turned them away from, Washuhem, their wicked ways and evil compatriots, Hara Derichem, their harmful associates and troubling paths, as well as from, Wamin, their immoral and improper deeds, Roamalhem, their corrupting and perverting endeavors. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yah, Jeremiah 23:22. If ever a man was guilty of this, that man was Paul. He spoke and wrote as though he had been authorized by God 510 to contradict God. But most rabbis are only marginally better with their deference to the Talmud. It is hard to imagine how different the lives of Jews would have been if those who claimed God's authority actually knew him, and had listened to him. There would have been no Assyrian or Babylonian, Greek or Roman invasions. Neither Christians nor Muslims would have persecuted Jews because the religions would never have taken root or grown. There would have been no diaspora, no Inquisition, or Holocaust. The people endured the worst man could deliver because they were unwilling to listen to Yahweh. God is approachable. That is the purpose of his covenant and his invitations to meet. If you want to know him, he has facilitated and published the way. So, if you are estranged from him, you can blame the errant nature of religious rhetoric. As an interrogative, any, a God, Elohim, who is near and approachable, forming close, personal relationships min karob, who provides the means to intimate associations. Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah, as opposed to, Walo, a God, Elohai, who is distant, alienated, and disassociated, min Rachauk, from long ago and far away. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:23. The question is rhetorical. Yahweh is approachable. He is personable. He desires above all else close, intimate relationships. Those who reject the moronic drivel of their religious leaders, and honestly search for him, find him waiting for them with open arms. Rachauk is a slap in the face to both Christianity and Judaism, where both religions are wont to keep the God of the Old Testament tucked away in the past. Long ago, 511 he was replaced by either Jesus or the rabbis depending upon a person's preferred poison. Can a man, imish, an individual, conceal himself, satar, hide himself by operating clandestinely, in a covert location, Bahamisthar, to promote conspiracies, such that I am not able to see him, wa any lo rahu, so am I not able to examine and expose him? Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. Was I not the one, Ha-Loeth, who filled up and completed, Ha-Male, who provided all of the necessary matter to completely satisfy the requirements of, thereby endowing, the spiritual and material realms, Ha-Shamem wa-eth ha-Eres. Authoritatively asks, Naum, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahowah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his Ha-Yeh, existence and our Shalom, restoration. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:24. Can you imagine being God, looking down on pathetic individuals scurrying around in the Vatican and in Mecca, as they plot their revolting religious schemes, and not being totally disgusted? Religious and political men think that they are so clever, so enlightened, so entitled, and yet they are nothing in comparison to Yahweh or even to that which God has created. The message remains, Yahweh has a long memory, and does not intend to forgive those who have hurt his children. They cannot hide, not in a synagogue of the comatose or even in death. While God pays no attention to those who pay no attention to him, he is fully aware of those who scheme against him. After all, to be a just judge, he must base his convictions on the evidence. 512 For the benefit of the relationship, I have heard that which, Shama eth Asher, those who claim to speak for God, Ha-Nabi, have and will say, Amar, will claim, promise, and declare, especially those who claim to have been inspired to speak, Ha-Nabim, lies, promoting mistaken beliefs, Checker, that which is misleading and invalid, that which betrays, deceives, and disappoints in my name, Bar Shemeni, in association with my designation, reputation, and renown, claiming, La-Amar, so as to infer and declare. I have received a divine revelation, Shalom, I have received a communication from God. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:25. The worst of these men is Paul, the founder of the Christian religion. The man who claimed to have been trained as a rabbi is the wolf in sheep's clothing. Having professed to have been an apostle sent by the command of God, he consistently contradicted God with his, but I say. Likewise, Muhammad, the founder of the Islamic religion, was also a sheker, liar. Take note, Yahweh did not say that some of those who have claimed to have received a divine revelation were liars, but that those who have made the claim were liars. That would be all of them. So that we are clear, while Yahowah asked me to do this for you, while we enjoy a close and productive relationship, and while I am routinely inspired by his words and spirit, this introduction to God, and indeed all of Yada Yahowah, is based upon the revelation God has made available to all of us in his Torah, prophets, and Psalms. I translate and comment. I do not dream and rant. Considering the inappropriateness, arrogance, and consequence of religious malfeasance, it must pain Yah to ask this question, especially since he has already provided the answer. 513 How long, Matei, until when, meanwhile, will this exist, Ha-yesh, in the hearts, Bar-Lab, in the character and ambitions, of the prophets, Ha-Nabi, who profess, Nobber, vain lies, Sheker, misleading deceptions and falsehoods, including mistaken beliefs and false hopes, and who promote, Wa-Nabi, claiming God's authority, the delusions and deceit, Tarmith, the fraudulent and treacherous deceptions, of their thinking and judgment, Labhem, of their desires, motivations, and ambitions. Yirmiyah, revere and respect Yah, Jeremiah 23:26. He has already given us the answer. Religious leaders will continue to deceive until Yahowah personally intervenes to stop them during the last days. And this is because God cannot intervene and micromanage the world without destroying the viability of free will, and with it the validity of his covenant relationship. We turn to this prophecy expressly for this next statement. It is among the most riveting revelations ever uttered regarding the underlying scheme which makes religious deception possible. Their plan is, Ha-Chesab, they have cunningly devised and fabricated a scheme, having calculated and decided that by weaving together a plot they are determined, Kal participle, for my people, Ethameni, for my family, to overlook, forget, and to cease to properly value, La Shakik, to ignore, to be unmindful of, to lose sight of the significance of, and to no longer respond to, hyphal infinitive, my personal and proper name, Shem Eni, my designation, reputation, and renown, by way of their revelations. Bar Ha-Chalam Hem, with their dreams, thoughts, and feelings, their altered state of awareness, and their claims to having received inspired insights, which, Asher, they recount to and record among, proclaiming to, Sapar, they write, making a written record after telling, Peel imperfect, 1,514 another, La Ish, and to their revolting countrymen, and evil associates, La Reahu, to others in their race and company who are similarly corrupt. In the same manner while in a relationship, Ka Asher, with the Lord, Baha Baal, with the one seeking to lord over, possess, and control, their forefathers, Abhem, their ancestors, overlooked, ignored, and forgot, Shakik, were not mindful of and ceased to appreciate the significance of, Kal perfect, my name, Eth Shem Eni, my personal and proper designation. Yirmiyah, Yeh lifts up, Jeremiah 23:27. As we now know, the title Ha-Baal, the Lord describes Ha-Satan, the adversary. Satan's ambition is to lord over everyone, including God. He wants to control and possess the souls of all humankind, and thereby keep them from knowing Yah. He accomplishes his goal by twisting, corrupting, misinterpreting, and counterfeiting Yahowah's word. So, as you might expect, religious clerics are the adversary's favorite tools. Through them, he controls every religious institution on earth. Since God has been unequivocal, consider this extrapolation, had it not been for the religious ploy of replacing Yahowah's name with Ha-Baal, the Lord, the religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam would not exist. Those who conceived Judaism recognized this, which is why they made it a crime punishable by death to speak or write Yahowah's name. The Roman Catholic Church recognized this, which is why they saw to it that their God was called the Lord throughout the text of the New Testament. And, of course, the Lord Jesus Christ bears no resemblance to Yahowah. All the while, Muhammad remained so ignorant of Yahowah's name, had it been used by the rabbis in Yathrib, he would not have been able to fool anyone with his preferences for the Lord, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, and 515 Allah, especially since the Quran draws its credibility from the Torah and prophets, bastardizing them for Muhammad's benefit. This statement demonstrates that Yahowah considers the plan to replace his name to be premeditated, a cunningly devised scheme. It was Chesab, calculated. And the express purpose of depriving billions of this vital information was because religious Jews wanted Yahwudden, Jews to Shakik, to overlook and then forget, ultimately ceasing to care about or value Yahowah's name. Without it, there would be no relationship, no revelation, no protection, and no salvation. It was the most heinous crime ever perpetrated in the name of religion. As for the motive, religious Jews preferred their chalam, revelations, thoughts, and feelings to God's testimony. It is as simple and sinister as that. Recognizing that they would do so, Yahowah disclosed the nature of their plan 1,200 years prior to rabbis working against him when they compiled the Babylonian Talmud. He said that they would sapar, recount and record their diabolical scheme, creating a written record in conjunction with their revolting associates. It is an apt depiction of the text the Haredim revere over the word of God. But their malfeasance would not stop there, because this plot lies at the very heart of every religious deception on earth. It is the first of many steps away from God. The crowning achievement of Yada Yahowah, including this introduction to God, is to restore what has been forgotten. While there are thousands of wrongs to be righted, foremost among them is to correct anything which precludes Yada Yah. Because free will is an essential component of a loving relationship, Yahowah will not intervene to stop religious 516 clerics from changing and corrupting his word, even from lying in his name, at least prior to his return. Therefore, let the prophet, Nabi, who associates himself with these revelations, thoughts, and feelings, Asher Ethu Chalam, who derives similarly altered realizations, continue to recount and record, choosing to write, publish, and communicate, Sapar, proclaim, Peel imperfect Joseph. By continuing, the prophet is choosing to influence others, these thoughts, dreams, and altered revelations, Chalam, and, to reveal the way to receive the benefits of the relationship, Wa Asher, my word, Dabarym, my message, will be effectively communicated by him, Dabar Ethu, truthfully and reliably, Emeth, dependably and accurately, honestly and verifiably, with certainty and integrity, unwaveringly and boldly, unvaryingly and consistently. What does, Ma, the straw, La Teben, the chaff, the light, dry, brittle stubble which is easily blown by the wind, have in common with that which is purifying and enlightening, Eth Habar, as brilliant as the chosen and favorite sun? Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:28. Satan has always had his advocates. And that will not change between now and Yahowah's return. Choice remains paramount. And therefore, the religious will babble on until there is nothing left to say. We are all given the opportunity to trust men or God, place our faith in religion or engage in the covenant relationship. As was the case in the Garden of Eden, God allows the advocates of options which are opposed to him have their say. If people can't distinguish between what is valuable and what is worthless, then that is their loss. 517 It is perplexing that Yahowah remains so unpopular considering who he is and what he has done. Nonetheless, the self-serving religious pontificators reveal their personal ambitions and altered sense of reality are many, while few reliably and accurately convey Yahowah's word. But the good news is that, according to God, he is dependable and unwavering, consistent and verifiable. The religious lies are being compared to chaff, brittle stubble of little value which is tossed away and blown by the wind. Whereas the word of God is purifying and enlightening, as brilliant as the chosen and favorite sun. And that would be Daud, the prophet and psalmist, the Messiah and King. When I began with Yahowah 22 years ago, I was of the opinion that Islam was in a dead heat with Scientology and Mormonism for the world's dumbest religion, while recognizing that it was far and away the most murderous and misogynous. At the time, I saw the Roman Catholic Church as having the most destructive influence on humankind. While those conclusions are largely intact, I have come to see the stupefying effects of progressives, conspiracy, and Judaism as even more debilitating relative to God's people. They are mentally incapacitating and anti-Semitic. Progressives, as neo-Marxists, are incapable of rational thought, learning from history or processing evidence. And their idiocy is contagious as they are quickly coming to control what can be discussed in public, what can be said on the internet, presented on social media, and reported in the news. Worse, progressives, including the Jews in their ranks, have made Israel their common foe, to such an extent that they embrace the most racist, terroristic, sexist, and fascist religion in human history. My concern with progressives is that between the technology firms they own, politicians they influence, and 518 their dramatic rise in popularity among those under 30, sharing the truth will soon be forbidden. We are therefore racing against the clock to provide Yahowah's message while we are able. Should you wonder why God is providing 2 witnesses beginning on Passover in 2030, it is because there will be no other way to convey his testimony. One last thought on progressives: they want more government involvement and control over people's lives. God wants less human interference. Conspiracy has become the fastest growing and most mentally debilitating religion today. As many as 40% of people worldwide ascribe to one or more conspiracies. These include being anti-vax, anti-news, and anti-Semitic. They believe that COVID-19 is a government plot, and the vaccines to stop it are control mechanisms. They see jet condensation trails as chemtrails, 9/11 as an inside job, mass shootings as staged, news as faked, elections as stolen, and Jews as manipulative. Some even believe in shapeshifters, reptilian overlords, and a flat planet. They are impervious to evidence and reason. And they are not only vicious toward those who disagree with them, to ally with them is to lose all credibility. Surprisingly, conspirators cross every racial divide and come from all walks of life. They are black and white, rich and poor, religious and secular, young and old, liberal and conservative. Their only common denominator is the need to blame someone else for their miserable lives, most often Jews. Black Lives Matter is an example of an exceedingly popular conspiracy. It's true that young black men are being killed at an alarming rate, but 93% of the time it is at the hand of another black man. Unwilling to accept responsibility for their own lives, BLM seeks to blame police and racism for this horrible reality. They want to tear 519 down, the least racist nation on earth, the very place with the fewest constraints on upward mobility and economic opportunity. Speaking of Jews, the religious have done to themselves the opposite of what is claimed of them. Rather than manipulating the world to their advantage, the Hasidic are debilitating themselves. Ultra-Orthodox Judaism is overwhelmingly isolating, mentally incapacitating, economically depressing, socially debilitating, and so misogynist. Women have become possessions. Judaism is a greater hindrance to Jews than Islam or Christianity, progressives or conspirators, and likely more degrading than these menaces combined. Moreover, Judaism is the most anti-Semitic religion ever conceived in that it was the first to degrade Yahowah's Shem name, removing it from his testimony and concealing it from the people. In this light, Yahowah reveals, is not, Halo, this, Ko, my word, Dabarym, similar to, Ka, fire, Esh, that which enlightens and consumes is brilliant and radiant. Authoritatively questions, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, and similar to, Wakar, an implement which, Patish, a tool which, breaks apart, patzes, divides, separates, and disperses the pieces of, earth and material, seller, of the hardest matter and strongest defense. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:29. Esh, fire has been a useful metaphor throughout the ages. Fire provides light, which is not only symbolic of Yahowah's spiritual nature, it can lead to enlightenment. Fire provides the energy to empower. It is nourishing in that we can use it to remove the pathogens that would otherwise contaminate our food and water. It provides warmth, like a loving relationship. It has always served as 520 the heart of a home. Most relevant, fire is transformative in that it can do as Yahowah promises, convert physical organic matter into radiant energy and light. Likewise, fire can also consume that which is not properly prepared and protected, incinerating the rubbish. It is fire, after all, which provides the energy upon which a crucible functions as it separates that which is valuable from the dross. It is little wonder that Yahowah presented himself to his people in what they would describe as Esh, fire. Yah's word has the power to enlighten, empower, and enrich those who value it appropriately. Further, it serves as the basis of judgment for those who corrupt it. Since I have long seen God's word as the most important implement which we can wield, it makes sense that Yahowah considers his testimony as something which breaks apart the strongest defenses man can muster. He is using it, after all, to crush Judaism in advance of his return. From this perspective, we should all be grateful that our Heavenly Father has provided and then directed our attention to this prophecy. The words conveyed through Yirmiyah are exquisitely tailored to God's target audience at this moment in time. So likewise, Laken, all of this considered, look up and pay attention. Hine, please note here and now, I am against those who claim to speak for me. Al-Nabi, I am over and opposed to those who reveal religious notions, prophetically declares, Naum, announces in advance of it occurring, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. These individuals, Ish, the people, steal, taking without permission, Ganab, who clandestinely conspire to rob, deceiving by sweeping away, my words 521 Dabarym, my message, testimony, witness, and discourse, away from, Min, their fellow countrymen, Ethriahu, their companions, race, and neighbors. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:30. There were men and women through whom Yahowah spoke. He did so by name, and often in first person. And he demonstrated his inspiration of the words he spoke to them through prophecy. Their message is as consistent as their makers, never varying over the millennia. Those who claim to speak for God, but who are not among those the Almighty selected, typically forego using Yahowah's name and they are inept prophetically. Their words, like Paul's, Akiba's, Maimonides, and Muhammad's, are in constant conflict with God's testimony. An exception would be Ezekiel, who states Yahowah's name frequently because his Lord craves it. It is a desperate ploy for credibility in a book otherwise devoid of it. This distinction is so clear, exposing and condemning Muhammad in Prophet of Doom, Paul in Questioning Paul, and the rabbis throughout the Mode, Appointments volume of Yada Yahowah and in Babel, was so simple a Gawi could do it. Yahowah is also condemning the translators and publishers of Bibles who have clandestinely conspired to rob his people of his message without his permission by removing the value of the words which comprise his testimony, while leaving valueless ones in their place. Corruption is a very serious crime with egregious consequences. If you want lies, look to men, especially religious clerics. If you want truth, look to God. And speaking of God, according to Yahowah, he is opposed to any and all religious pontifications and 522 practices which take his word away from his people. Those who would conspire to rob souls of Yahowah's testimony by removing anything from it or replacing it with something else are in serious trouble. And make no mistake, this is precisely what the religions of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and even Socialist Secular Humanism have done. There was a profound insight associated with Yahowah's last statement I do not want you to miss. God is coming down hard against Jewish religious leaders because they have deprived his people of his name and testimony. They not only replaced both, but they also stole the title, Torah, ascribing it to their Talmud. The Torah was then put under wraps, dressed up like a whore in their synagogues, replete with a tightly wrapped binder and gilded shield. As I was translating God's follow-on statement, I found myself searching to find the most accurate way to render Nabi, prophet. When used in reference to Moses, Shamuel, Daud, Yashar, or Yirmiah, it is an exceptionally high and noble calling. But here, Nabi has been exceedingly, and consistently derogatory. So, when I question why Yahowah didn't define these religious leaders as false prophets, I realized that there was actually no reason to do so. Since Malachi and Zechariah over 2,400 years ago, there has been a cavalcade of impostors, but not one whom God engaged. Saying false prophet is like saying false religion. They are inseparable and deceptive. Pay attention, Hine, behold, I am against, any I am opposed, to, the inspired pontifications of those who prophesy on behalf of the gods, Nabi, the founders of religions and those who promote them, from Nobber, to prophesy, prophetically declares, Noun, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher, existence, 523 were select their tongues and speeches, Halakak Lashonhem, who are carried away with their language, and who persistently and emphatically speak as if under divine influence, Naum, whose declarations are considered inspired and godly, Kalim perfect. Yirmiah 23:31. Right here and right now, Hine, behold, I am against, any I am opposed to, the continuous prophetic pronouncements of those who speak on behalf of the gods, Nobber, the founders of religions and those who promote them, Nephil imperfect, by continually promoting religious misconceptions the false prophet is stained with the consequence, along with the mistaken beliefs, false hope, deceptive notions, and fraudulent nature, Sheker, the dishonest and errant lies, breach of faith, and false dealings, trickery, and disappointing delusions, of the revelations, impressions, and feelings, Shalom, of the disparate messages, altered reality, suppressed awareness, interpretations and dreams, declares Naum, prophetically reveals, Yahowah, in addition to, those who recount, write, and profess them, Sapahem, who proclaim them, record them, celebrate them, number them, or take them into account, and thereby, wander away. Misleading, because they are wrong, deceive and misdirect, my people, Ameni, my family, through their lies and falsehoods, Barsakahem, with their deceptive, misleading, and fraudulent statements, and their vain and disappointing accounts, and through their rude and impertinent, arrogant and reckless, self-willed and stubborn speech, Wabarpakazuthem, their self-serving and self-motivated, wanton and conceited extravagance and boasts. I, did not send them, Lo Shalakhem, I did not dispatch or authorize them, and I did not instruct, appoint, ordain, direct, or authorize them, while Lo 524 Zawahem, I did not constitute them or provide them with any guidance or authority, Peel perfect. And so they are of absolutely no value or benefit whatsoever, Lo their contribution is worthless and they accomplish nothing which is useful, positive, profitable, or good because these goats are to no avail, hyphal infinitive hyphal imperfect, to the family, Lahan Hazeh, on behalf of the people, declares Naum, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah. Yirmiah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:32. God has stated the obvious and yet it's seldom considered or appreciated. Yahowah is opposed to religion because the religious mislead his people and cause them to go astray, wandering away from him. And since there is no religious institution on earth which conveys Yahowah's word accurately, completely, or truthfully, every faith falls under this condemnation. According to God, religion is valueless, completely and totally worthless. Such institutions speak for man, not for God. Yahowah is universally opposed to those who claim his authority. He is against those who prefer their words over his, affirming that God is not in favor of the Talmud, New Testament, Quran, Zohar, or Book of Mormon. God is averse to all of those who persistently and emphatically speak as if under divine influence, putting him at odds with rabbis, priests, popes, pastors, and imams. The beliefs professed by Paul, Akiba, Muhammad, and Maimonides are sheker, mistaken, deceptive, and fraudulent. The New Testament is rife with disappointing delusions while the Talmud is a reservoir of false accusations. However, be careful because this sweeping condemnation was not limited to the instigators. It also includes the Saphahem, those who recount, write, and 525 profess such things who proclaim, record, celebrate, or take religious deceptions into account. The reason is simple: they cause God's people to be misled and misdirected. His truth is replaced with their sukkah, lies. Yahowah finds the religious pack as youth, rude and offensive, impertinent and reckless. He did not instruct them, appoint them, authorize them, or ordain them. God has nothing to do with the religious other than he will judge and condemn them. God's perception of religion and the religious is, therefore, the opposite of mankind's viewpoint where faith is valued and religions are esteemed. Yahowah says, "Wa yal lo yal," and so they are of absolutely no value or benefit whatsoever. Rather than being a force for good, their contribution is worthless. Rather than a positive influence, religion accomplishes nothing useful, positive, profitable, or good. It is to no avail to his people or anyone else. That is God's view of religion, of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, secular humanism, and conspiracy. What's yours? In this next passage, apart from the context of this discussion, we would have two otherwise equally viable options when it comes to translating Massa. It can be a burden which is carried, or it can be an inspired revelation, authorized promise, and prophetic declaration. And yet in this discussion, since God has been focused upon contrasting his word with man's religious messages, and has said nothing whatsoever about his burdens, should they even exist, the choice becomes rather obvious. And so should one of these people, YYV1C8, ask you, shall, question you, inquiring, about this, Ha 526a, or alternatively, the prophet, Nabi, the one who claims inspiration, or even, the priest or minister, Kohen, government advisor, policymaker, and teacher, so as to say, Ma, what is, Ma, Yahowah, prophetic pronouncement about lifting up and carrying away, Massa, inspired revelation and authorized promises regarding assistance, sustenance, forgiveness, and support, from NASA, to lift up and carry away. And you respond to them, Wa ma elhem, what, ethma, prophetic revelation about lifting up and carrying away, Massa, authorized promises and inspired declaration regarding assistance, sustenance, forgiveness, and support, from NASA, to lift up and carry away. Then, I will reject, forsake, and abandon you, Natash eth atom, I will reject and withdraw from you, separating myself from you, disassociating with you. Prophetically declares, noun, reveals in advance by way of inspiration in an authorized message, Yahowah, as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence. Yirmiyah, respect Yah, Jeremiah 23:33. I suspect that the reason Massa is errantly rendered as burden is an artifact of its root, Nasa, which means to lift up and carry away. But it isn't God's burden which is being removed, but, instead, ours should we avail ourselves of the process. Therefore, if we remain ignorant of the way God Nasa, which is through the Mikra, we are dead men walking. The mode Mikra provide the lone, authorized, and credible path to Yahowah. Every other route and promise lead in the opposite direction and, thus, to Natash. Therefore, if someone doesn't care enough about God or what he has to say to read and listen to his testimony, to observe, to examine, and to consider his prophetic declarations, especially on how to cultivate a relationship, then they should not be surprised that Yah wants nothing 527 to do with them. And while that is stated unequivocally, as it is what Natash, reject and forsake means, what's implied in this context is that, if a person is more comfortable with, if they prefer, or have put their faith in the message promoted by a religious institution, there is no hope of them ever associating with Yahowah. Demonstrating their inability to properly convey Yahowah's word, Christian publishers have made a mess of this verse. In Roman Catholicism's Vulgate, we find that the only reasonable translation of Massa in this context was forsaken. Yahowah's Maseh, inspired revelation, authorized promise, and prophetic declaration regarding being lifted up and carried away became a burden in Jerome's mind. But more than this, he precluded Roman Catholics from understanding that those who are clueless as to the existence and relevance of Yahowah's Maseh will be rejected by God. And while that is tragic, this malfeasance does not end with the Vulgate. The King James Version replicated the same mistake. Uninspired by Yahowah's Maseh, they published, "And when this people, or the prophet, or a priest, shall ask thee, saying, What is the burden of the Lord? Thou shalt then say unto them, What burden? I will even forsake you, saith the Lord." The New American Standard wrote oracle in place of burden, which is closer, but the concept of an oracle comes to us from Greek paganism. And the context here in this discussion is competing prophetic revelations. Turning to the New Living Translation, they transformed prophecy into a burden with this bizarre twist. Suppose one of the people or one of the prophets, or priests asks you, "What prophecy has the Lord burdened you with now?" You must reply, "You are the burden. The Lord says he will abandon you." They were, thereby, perpetrating the very crime Yahowah has been 528 condemning. And they did so because they want the Old Testament to be considered a burden, for if it isn't, then Paul, their patron saint, lied when he claimed that it was. In the Jewish Publication Society's 1917 rendition of the Holy Scriptures according to the Masoretic text of Jeremiah 23:33 we read, "And when this people, or the prophet, or a priest, shall ask thee, saying, What is the burden of the Lord? Then shalt thou say unto them, What burden? I will cast you off, saith the Lord." In a case of garbage in, garbage out, I suppose, Bible translators want us to believe that pakad, which means to value something to the extent that one takes inventory and stock of it, caring enough to examine it and trust it to the point he or she is mobilized and summoned by it, really means to punish. But the prophet, Wahar Nabi, and yet the one who makes claims of inspiration and authorization, as well as the priest, Wahar Cohen, the advisor and teacher, and the people, Wahar Am, the family, who, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, who to show the proper path to walk to get the most out of life, consistently and actually speak about, Amar, genuinely respond to, inquire about, share, focus upon, literally and continually declare, and proclaim, Kalim perfect. The prophetic pronouncement regarding lifting up and carrying away, Maseh, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about assistance, sustenance, forgiveness and support, from Nasa, to lift up and carry away, of Yahowah, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahovah, our Eloah, God as directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his Hayeh, existence and our Shalom, restoration, I will pay attention to and attend to, will value and accept. Taking stock of and looking after, Pakad, that closely aligned and unique individual, Al-Ha-Ish Ha-Hu, as well as his godly family and home, while El-Baith-Hu, 529 and also for his household. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:34. The one and only thing which differentiates a person who is rejected by God from one who is accepted by him is a person's response to Yahowah's prophetic pronouncements regarding the means to be lifted up and carried away. Therefore, it is in our interest, in our family's interest, that we speak about, respond to, inquire about, share, focus upon, declare, and proclaim Yah's prophetic promises as they are presented in the Torah regarding the Mod Mikra. When the time comes, and should you be interested in them, there are 3 volumes of Yada Yahowah devoted to this process, Mikra, invitations, Katsah, harvests, and Mod, appointments. They present Pesach, Passover, Matzah, unyeasted bread, Bikurim, firstborn children, Shabuah, 7 sevens, Towrah, trumpets, Kippurim, reconciliations and Sukkah, shelters such that you can appreciate how Yahowah goes about lifting us up and carrying us away from man's foibles. It is particularly reassuring and comforting to hear Yahowah promise to Pakad, look after and care about the Baith, family and home of those who value and share his word. There is nothing better in this life than to be Pakad, to be attended to, valued, and accepted by Yah, for God to look after us, be concerned about us, and trust us sufficiently to summon and mobilize us. This pronouncement only makes sense when Maseh is synonymous with the word of God. When it is rendered as a burden, as it is in the Vulgate, KJV, and JPS, the corrupted message is counterproductive. This Roman Catholic rendition is not only inaccurate, it's senseless, and as for the prophet, and the priest, and the people that shall say, the burden of the Lord, I will visit upon that man, and upon his house. But so is the King James 530 version, and as for the prophet, and the priest, and the people, that shall say, the burden of the Lord, I will even punish that man and his house. In fact, it is considerably worse. Faltering again, the New American Standard repeated their oracle reference before following the lead of the King James and mistakenly translated Pakad as punishment as opposed to attending to and accepting. Taking a novel approach, the New Living Translation, showing a lack of consistency, dropped the burden rendering of Massa, and then conceived a supposed translation that makes no sense whatsoever when juxtaposed against the previous verse. How do you get from, suppose one of the people or one of the prophets, or priests asks you, what prophecy has the Lord burdened you with now? You must reply, you are the burden. The Lord says he will abandon you. 2. If any prophet, priest, or anyone else says, I have a prophecy from the Lord, I will punish that person along with his entire family. Moving from man's corruptions to Yahweh's revelation, we find. This is what, you should actually say, Amar, you should respond to, consistently inquire about, share, speak regarding, focus upon, declare, proclaim, promise, answer, and respond, each individual, each on behalf of, al, his fellow countrymen, Reahu, his friends, companions, associates, members of his race, and neighbors, and, wa, each individual, ish, on behalf of, al, his brethren, Ihu. What, ma, has Yahowah, written as directed by his Torah, teaching, answered and replied, Anna, provided as a witness, responded to, and declared, and what, wa ma, has Yahowah, communicated in his word, Dabar, spoken and verbalized, announced and 531 conveyed. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:35. You may be entitled to your opinions, but when it comes to surviving this life, all that matters is Yahowah's answers and testimony. We should know it, act upon it, and share it. But sadly, rather than focus on Yahowah's testimony, most have placed their faith in religious corruption. Therefore, after the previous commendation, we have the following condemnation. However, the prophetic pronouncement regarding lifting up and carrying away, Massa, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about assistance, sustenance, forgiveness, and support, from Nasa, to lift up and carry away, of Yahowah, an accurate presentation of the name of Eloah, God as guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher existence, you no longer mention, memorialize, or even remember, Lo Zakarod, you do not recall, discuss, invoke, or proclaim any more. By contrast, for each individual, La Ish, according to each man, there exists his own, higher, revelation regarding forgiveness and assistance, Massa, proclamations about being lifted up and receiving support, his own word, Dabarym, his message and account. You change and twist, perverting and convoluting, Chafak, you invert and overturn, you distort and upend, the words, Dabar, the message and testimony, of the living, existing, and renewing, Chaim, the animated, lively, robust, reviving, and growing, God, Elohim, Yahowah, a transliteration of Yahowah as instructed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, of the 532 heavenly messengers, our God, Elohim and Akhu. Yirmiyah, respect and revere, Jeremiah 23:36. It's true, if you were to ask a religious Jew to describe the meaning or purpose of any of Yahowah's 7 Mikrei, they wouldn't have an answer. They have replaced most of them, and the ones they still observe are convoluted to the point that they no longer serve any value. For example, rather than recognizing that Pesach is part of Chag Matzah, matzah has been relegated to one of many ingredients during Passover, a meal that no longer provides a meaningful portion of lamb. Yom Kippurim is a day of affliction rather than a time to celebrate the relationship with Yahowah being reconciled. And as we know, the religious have their own scriptures, from Talmud to Zohar, from New Testament to Quran. The words of the living God revealed in the Torah, Nabiwam is more are distorted and perverted, convoluted and overturned, such that they no longer resemble the original intent. While people claim that we should respect everyone's religion, and that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, all God is saying here is that most everyone has both, having placed their faith in their opinions, not caring that their beliefs are inconsistent with Yahowah's message. And while that is indeed a waste of glorious potential, God has not given up on his people. Like a loving father encouraging his wayward kids, Yahowah continues to provide us with the best possible advice. So, this is what, you should actually say, Amar, you should respond to, inquire about, share, speak about, focus upon, and ask, to the prophet, El-Ha-Nabi, the person who claims to speak on behalf of God. What was, Yahowah, God's name transliterated as guided by his Torah, instructions on his higher existence, response to you, and answers 533 for you, Anna Otter, reply to you as a witness, and, what has, Yahowah, the pronunciation of Yahowah, communicated in his word, Dabar, spoken and verbalized, announced and declared. Yirmiyah, teaches and guides, Jeremiah 23:37. God has repeated his advice because far too few people heed it, and this is a matter of life and death. The only answers which count when it comes to forming a relationship with God and living forever with him are found in Yahowah's Dabar, word. The testimony is always self-evident. We can quickly and easily discard those who are lying about what they claim God has told them. Moreover, Yahowah has been clear, there have been no prophets since the last of them 2,400 years ago. The fact is, Yahowah's answers never change. His response to us remains consistent. If someone claims anything which fails to affirm the message he has already provided, the revelation is false. If Yahowah's name is not included, someone is lying. If there is no prophecy, or if any aspect of a prediction proves invalid, the entire message is unreliable. In the next verse, we are greeted by a magnificent and yet gut-wrenching prophecy. After communicating the benefits of Amar, affirming, accepting, and proclaiming Yahowah's Massa, prophetic pronouncements regarding being lifted up and carried away, Yah informs his people that he will dispatch his word to them by way of a witness who affirms his Massa. But then he tells us that his people will reject him, and that as a result, they will be rejected. God says in essence, if we acknowledge and accept his prophetic declarations regarding being lifted up and carried away, we ought to seriously consider why he was announcing that he would be sending someone to explain 534 the importance of Massa. We should also contemplate the consequence of so many people rejecting this affirmation of his word. After all, he is putting us on notice, he will have no remembrance of those who discount or pervert his testimony. The bottom line here is that God is not into partial credit. Man's religious corruptions have no value whatsoever in his eyes. There is no compromise or wiggle room here. What follows is complicated. So, let's give this prophetic pronouncement the credit it deserves. But with YYV1C8, so if and upon the condition of you proclaiming, Amar, declaring and answering, Kal imperfect, the prophetic pronouncement of Yahowah lifting up and carrying away, Massa Yahowah, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about assistance, sustenance, forgiveness, and support of Yahowah, from Nasa, to lift up and carry away, then as a result, La Kenko, likewise so then here and now, Yahowah says, Yahovah Ma, because, Yan, as a result of, you have acknowledged this, saying these words. Amatam eth ha Dabarym ha. This is the prophetic pronouncement of Yahowah lifting up and carrying away, Massa Yahowah, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about assistance, sustenance, forgiveness and support of Yahowah, from Nasa, to lift up and carry away, then when I reached out to you and dispatched you, wa shalak el atom, to explain it, la Amar. You did not renounce or question, lo Amar, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about assistance, sustenance, forgiveness and support of Yahowah, Massa Yahowah, the prophetic pronouncement of Yahowah lifting up and carrying away. Yirmiyah 23:38. 535 Otherwise, La Ken, here and now, Hine, behold, I, myself, would forget about you, any Nasha eth atom, and would cast you away, wa Natash eth atom, and reject and abandon you, thrusting you away, from my presence, Minin al-Pana any, because of your trickery and deception, Nasha, your delusions and money grubbing which have led so many astray, along with the inhabitants of the city, wa eth ha-ir, which, to provide the benefits of the relationship, Asher, I gave to you, Nathan la atom, and to your forefathers, wa la by atom. Yirmiyah, respect and revere Yah, Jeremiah 23:39. This revelation lived up to its billing, it was complicated. And yet, because of what preceded it, it is apparent that the message is that Yahowah expects us to know what he has done for us. He wants us to appreciate his Massa, particularly as his support for us is enabled through the Mikra. We cannot capitalize upon that which we do not know, which is why God is so disappointed in his people for corrupting his message in this regard. That said, translating Massa was not difficult, especially when we consider that its root, Nasa, is among the Torah's most prevalent verbs. Recognizing how Yahowah lifts us up and carries us away is also readily apparent because the Berith and Mikra serve as the heart and soul of the Torah. We were designed with the capacity to be observant and thoughtful, and with the mental acuity to make these kinds of connections because they lead to understanding. This God-given capability is Yahowah's gift to us, as is his willingness to lift us up and carry us away from the mess men have made. 536 Addressing that mess, with so much at stake, those who pontificate and promote the words of man over the word of God will find. And, I will bestow, Nathan, I will place, upon you, al-atom, over and against you, an everlasting, olam, an eternal and enduring, perpetual and never-ending, censure and reprimand, chirpa, ignominious condemnation and denunciation, insulting criticism and accusation, dishonorable shame and disgrace, reproach and contempt, and also, an eternal, olam, a perpetual, never-ending, and enduring, humiliation and ignominy which leads to a diminished and lowly status, kalamoth, perception of being shameful, insignificant, dishonorable, and unworthy, which, to affirm the narrow and correct path to the benefits of the relationship, asher, cannot be ignored, lo shakik, cannot be overlooked or forgotten, nephil imperfect. Yirmiyah, lifts up, Jeremiah 23:40. This is as it must be. It is inconsiderate and rude for men and women to ignore Daud's Massah, uplifting sacrifice on our behalf during Pesach and Matzah, deserving of censure and reprimand. But to remove Yahowah's and Daud's names from their explanations of what they have done for us, and then to misrepresent their words, diverting our attention to the minutiae of men with the likes of the Talmud, transcends disrespectful and becomes dishonorable and ignominious, a crime which cannot be overlooked. While God has no memory of those who do not remember his word, he will not forget or forgive what others have done in the name of religion to deprive his people of his Massah. For those who promote their own testimony as if it were authorized and inspired by God, there will be an eternal consequence. The advocates of religion will find their souls diminished to a very low status, humiliated and censured forever for their crimes. 537 rabbis and those who have supported them will endure what they were wont to deny. They will receive a well-deserved share of their just deserts for denying what God was wont to provide. The ploy Paul used to establish Christianity was to disassociate Daud from his accolades and accomplishment, depriving the gullible of the Massah resulting from Pesach, Matzah, and Bikurim. As a result, Paul, and all who promote the false apostles' faith, will endure the consequence delineated in this closing statement. Don't allow yourself to be victimized by them, as have several billion souls. Similarly, 100 years thereafter, another rabbi, this one named Akiba, disassociated God's people from his Torah by insisting upon a religious substitution, a false messiah and beguiling Talmud comprised of rabbinical arguments and apologetics. The diaspora was the result. It is time to reject him and come back home. And so it would be that in the 7th century Muhammad, having bought Talmud stories from rabbis in Yathrib, twisted them to his liking to create his Quran, conceiving a religion from Babel that would turn Jews into prey. Even today, over 1 billion Muslims, given the opportunity, would sacrifice their lives to kill Jews, believing that this pathetic plagiarizer was a prophet. Considering the popularity of man's words, especially as they are pontificated in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, as opposed to Yahowah's words that are conveyed in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, there are few more compelling or confirming prophetic declarations than those found in this chapter of Yirmiyah. It has served as the perfect introduction. And to think it was inspired by Yahowah, the very God so many have erroneously come to associate with religion. And yet in these words, we find God damning the institution. That is sobering. 538, I will readily admit the obvious, translating Yirmiyah 23:38-39 was not easy. And while I think that I have rendered the words transparently, correctly, and consistently, I apologize if I failed to convey Yah's full intent. However, what I know for certain is that our appreciation of Yahowah's Massah is vital to our survival, and, therefore, it cannot be a burden. It is, instead, the means God deployed to remove burdens from us. While I have no idea what the following rendering of the 38 and 39 verses means, I still thought sharing this would be beneficial. The statement we found meaningful became so convoluted in the King James Version, it lost all meaning, but since ye say, the burden of the Lord, therefore thus saith the Lord, because ye say this word, the burden of the Lord, and I have sent unto you, saying, ye shall not say, the burden of the Lord, therefore, behold, I, even I, will utterly forget you, and I will forsake you, and the city that I gave you and your fathers, and cast you out of my presence. While no better, by reading the Roman Catholic Vulgate, we discover that the KJV is little more than a revision of it. But if you shall say, the burden of the Lord, therefore thus saith the Lord, because you have said this word, the burden of the Lord, and I have sent to you, saying, say not, the burden of the Lord, therefore behold I will take you away carrying you, and will forsake you, and the city which I gave to you, and to your fathers, out of my presence. And I will bring an everlasting reproach upon you, and a perpetual shame which shall never be forgotten. It's little wonder Christians protest that they can't even understand the Old Testament of their Bibles. Let's lay out the prophetic tapestry Yahowah has unfurled before our eyes so that we are aware of what is going to occur as we approach the last days. 539 Woe, Howie, to the shepherds, Ra, who have led astray and destroyed, causing irreparable damage, Abad, because, they have scattered, pools, the flock, Etstasan, from my shepherding and nurturing, marrieth any, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23-1. So consequently, La Ken, this is what, Ko, Yahowah, Yahowah, the God, Elohim, of Israel, has to say, Amar, in opposition to, Al, those acting as shepherds, Hara, those leading, feeding, and shearing, Hara, my people, Ethamene, you, Atom, yourselves, have led astray, pushed away, and scattered, Pools, my flock, Ethtasaneni, and, Wah, you have consistently driven them away by continually seducing and compelling them, Nadekhem. Therefore, Wah, you have not been concerned about them, Lo Pakad Ethem. Behold, Hine, I, Eni, myself, will hold you accountable and will reckon this against you, Pakad al-Atom, because of, Eth, the willful misconduct and unethical nature, Roa, of your foolish deeds and wanton abuses, Malal Atom, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23-2. Then I, Wah Eni, myself, will obtain and gather up, Kabats, the remnant, Eth Sherith, of my flock, Tasan Eni, from, Min, all, Shurl, of the lands, Ha Eres, where, Asher, I have temporarily scattered them, Nadak Ethem, their by name, Shem. But my desire is to return and restore them at this time, Washu Hena Eth Hena, upon their pasture, abode, and home, Al Nor Hena. And, Wah, they will be fruitful and flourish, Para, increasing and becoming great, living long and abundant lives, Wah Rabah. Yirmiyah 23-3. 540 Then I will raise up and establish, Wakum, over them, Alhem, those who actually serve as shepherds Ra, so that, Wah, they will do what is required to nurture, guide, and protect them, Rahem. And they shall not be afraid of being terrorized, Walo Yer, ever again, Ode. They will not be dismayed or discouraged, Walo Chatteth, nor will they be discounted or disregarded, Walo Pakad, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyahu 23-4. Now pay attention, Hine, to the days, Yaumim, which will have come for inclusion, Bo, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, when, Wah, I will have enabled restoration through Daud by raising up and establishing with Daud, Kumla Daud, the correct and proper, Zadik, means to life and growth, Zmak. And so, Wah, he will have provided counsel about his reign as king after having pondered the implications, Malak Melech, because, Wah, he obtained the insights needed to understand, the skill to succeed, and the capacity to instruct, Shekel. Then, Wah, he will be motivated to act and engage in, Wa'asah, the way to exercise good judgment regarding the means to fairly resolve disputes, Mishpat, and correctly providing vindication, Wah, in the land, Baha Eres. Yirmiyah 23-5. In his day, Bar Yaum Hu, Yahweh, will be liberated and saved, Yasha, and, Wah Israel, will live and dwell, shaken, in confidence, expressing their trust and reliance, La Betach. And thus, this is, Wazeh, his name, Shem Hu, which, as a benefit of the relationship, Asher, he will be called and encountered, Kara Hu, Yahowah is right about 541 of vindication, Yahowah Zadek and Akdu. Yirmiyah 23-6. Therefore, La Ken, behold, Hine, a time is coming, Yaumim Bo, prophetically declares Yahowah, Naum Yahowah, when they will no longer say, Wa Lo Amar Ode, Yahowah lives who raised, Che Yahowah Asher Allah, the children of Yisrael, Eth Ben Yisrael, out of the realm of religious and political oppression, Mineres Miraim, Yirmiyah 23-7, but, instead, as, Kym, Yahowah lives who raised, Che Yahowah Asher Allah, and who, for the benefit of the relationship, returned, Wa Asher Bo, for the descendants. Eth Zerah, of the family of Yisrael, Beth Yisrael, from the land to the north due to the value of the observant, Mineres Zarphon, and away from, Wa Min, all of the places, Shurl Ha Eres, where I had scattered and banished them there by name, Asher Nadak Shem. Then they shall live and remain, Wa Yashab, upon their own soil, Al Adamahem. Yirmiyah 23-8. Concerning the prophets, La Ha Nabim, my thoughts are grieved, and my heart is broken, Shabba Le Beni, within me, Bakir Beni. My essential essence, Shurl Etzameni, is shaken, Rachef. I am like, Hayakar, an inebriated individual, Ish Shikawa, similar to a man, Wakar Geber, intoxicated by wine, Obar Huyain, because of the appearance Minpana, from the presence, of Yahowah, and because of the presence, Wa Minpana, of his set-apart words, Dabar Kodesh Hu. Yirmiyah 23-9. Indeed, Ky, the earth, Ha Eres, is filled with, male, religious adultery, Naf. Therefore, because of, ky-min, the presence of this curse, Panal the earth, ha-eres, is despondent, able. The dwelling places, nor, where the word is questioned, midbar, are paralyzed and withering away, Yabish. 542 Their course of action, whereby they use oppression and extortion to facilitate their wayward lifestyle while running away, while Maruz Ahem, was, is and continues to be completely, higher, wrong, Ra, and their use of power, influence, and authority, Wagrahem, is not right, honest, or trustworthy, Lo Ken. Yirmiyah 23:10. Indeed, Ky, the prophet, Nabi, in addition to, Gam, the priest, Cohen, is defiled and godless, Shenef. And even, Gam, in, Bar, my house, Vatheni, I have found, Massa, they are evil, Rahem, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:11. As a result, likewise, Laken, their way, Derikhem, will be for them, Hyalahem, like, Ka, the promise of empty and unfulfilled words, nothing but false hope, Shilaklak. Away from the light and into the darkness, Bahafila, they will be thrust down as a punishment, Dachik, while being diminished, Wanafel, by it, Bahai. Rest assured, Ky, I will bring misfortune upon them, Ra Alhem, the year, Shana, of their appointed judgment and punishment, Pektahem, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:12. Among those who claim to speak for God, Wabar Nabi, of Shomarown, the capital of Israel, Shomarown, I have seen, Ra, something repulsive, foolish and abhorrent, unseemly stupid prayers, an attempt to whitewash that which is offensive, an unsavory smear campaign, a fool's folly, and impious proposition, Tifla. They claim to be divinely inspired, Nobba, by Ha-Baal, the Lord, Ba-Ha-Baal. Thereby, they have led my people, Israel, astray, deceiving the 543 nation, Watah am any eth Israel. Yirmiyah 23:13. Also, among, Wabar, Yahushalayim, prophets, Nabi, I have seen, Ra, an abomination which is horrible and shocking, Charura. They are unfaithful and commit religious adultery, Naf, and they walk, Waholok, in the lie, Baha-Sheker. So, they become powerful by empowering, Wa-Chazak, the hands, influence, and control, Yod, of miserable co-conspirators and errant countrymen, Ra, such that not a single, La-Bilthi, individual, Ish, turns away, Shub, from his perverse and errant cultural associations, Min Rahu. To me, La, all of them, Shurlhem, have become, higher, like, Ka, the same as, Sodom, Sodom, and they live, Yashab high, like, Ka, Gomorrah, where tyrants manipulate the people, treating them as merchandise and slaves, Amorah. Yirmiyah 23:14. As a result, therefore, Laken, this is what, Yahowah, of the vast array of spiritual envoys, Zaba, says, Amar, in opposition to, Al, those who claim to speak for God, Ha-Nabi, behold, I, Hineani, will cause them to consume, Akalethhem, this unpleasant and bitter curse, Lana. Then I will cause them to drink, Washakahem, poisonous, Rosh, water, Maim. This is because, Ky, from, Min, these prophets, Ethnabi, of Yahushalayim, comes forth, Yatsa, wicked profanity, vile corruption, insincere hypocrisy, and complete godlessness, Chanufa, to all, La Shurl, the earth, Ha-Eres. Yirmiyah 23:15. This is what, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, says, Amar, do not listen 544 Lo Shama, concerning the words, speeches, statements, and messages, Al-Dabar, of those prophets, Ha-Nabi, who claim to speak for God and prophesy, Ha-Nabi, to you, La-Atam. They, are vain, worthless, and delusional liars arrogantly providing false hope, Shibal, to you, Atam. Their words and the statements they speak, Dabar, reveal Kazon, their hearts and minds, their character and thinking, Labhem, and are not from, Lomin, the mouth of, Pei, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:16. They continuously say, Amar, to those who spurn and slander me, who disregard and despise me, La Natseni, regarding the very word and the message of, Dabar, Yahowah, Shalom Hayalatam, peace be unto you, Shalom Hayalatam. But they all walk, Washurl Holok, in the stubbornness of their heart, Washaruth Labhu. They claim, Amar, miserable suffering from such associations, Ra, will not come upon you, Lobo al Atom. Yirmiyah 23:17, by contrast, KY, which my, of them was present, Amod, in the council of, Bar Saud, Yahowah, Yahowah, and has examined, Wara, or heard, Shama, his word, Eth Dabarhu. Who, my, among them has paid attention and responded to, Kazab, his word, Dabarhu, and, Wa, has genuinely and consistently listened, Shama. Yirmiyah 23:18. Behold, Hine, the storm, Sarah, of Yahowah's, Yahowah, displeasure and fury, Kema, shall go forth, Yatsa. A swirling, Wa-chul, storm of destructive force, Sar, will be brought to bear, Chul, against the leaders who are the source, Al-Rosh, of that which is wrong, Raza. Yirmiyah 23:19. 545 Yahowah's, Yahowah, animosity, Af, will not return, Lo Shub, until, Ad, he is actually done working, Asahu, and until, Wa-ad, he takes his stand on behalf of, establishes, confirms and validates, Kum, the decisions and plans, Mazima, of his heart, Labhu. In the last days, Ba-Akarith Ha-Yaum, free of all competing influences, you will come to this realization and comprehend, Bin, this by, Ba-Hai, making the proper associations and connections to grow from knowing to understanding by being discerning and discriminating, Bina. Yirmiyah 23:20. I did not send, Lo Shalak, these prophets, Ethar Nabi, and so they, Wahem, will be quickly dispatched and driven away, rules. I did not speak to them, Lo Dabar Elhem. And yet, they, Wahem, spoke as if they were inspired, Nabi. Yirmiyah 23:21. But, Wa, if, they had been present, Amod, in my council, Bar Saudeni, then they would have heard, Wa Shama, my words, Dabar Eni, too, Eth, my family, Ameni. They would have returned, having turned them away from, Wa Shuhem Min, their wicked ways and evil compatriots, Hara Derikhem, as well as from, Wa Min, their immoral and improper deeds, Roa Malal Hem. Yirmiyah 23:22. Am, Ha, I, Eni, a God, Elohim, who is near and approachable, forming close, personal relationships, Min Karob. Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, as opposed to, Wa-lo, a God, Elohai, who is distant, alienated, and disassociated, Min Rechauk? Yirmiyah 23:23. Can a man, Imish, conceal himself, Satar, in a covert location, Vaha Misthar, such that I am not able 546 to see him, Wa Eni Lo Rahu? Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Was I not the one, Ha-Loeth, who filled up and completed, Ha-Mail, the spiritual and material realms, Ha-Shamaim Wa-Eth Ha-Eres? Authoritatively asks, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:24. For the benefit of the relationship, I have heard that which, Shama Eth Asher, those who claim to speak for God, Ha-Nabi, have and will say, Amar, especially those who claim to have been inspired to speak, Ha-Nabim, lies, promoting mistaken beliefs, Sheker, in my name, Va-Shem Eni, claiming, La Amar, I have received a divine revelation, Shalom Shalom. Yirmiyah 23:25. How long, Matei, meanwhile, Ad, will this exist, Ha-Yesh, in the hearts, Ba-Lab, of the prophets, Ha-Nabi, who profess, Nobber, vain lies, misleading deceptions, and false hope, Sheker, and who promote, Wa-Nabi, the delusions and deceit, Tamith, of their thinking and judgment, Labhem. Yirmiyah 23:26. Their plan, this cunningly devised and fabricated scheme which has been calculated and fabricated by weaving together the plot they determined, is, Ha-Chesab, for my people, Ethameni, to overlook, forget, and to cease to properly value, La Shakik, my personal and proper name, Shemeni, by way of their revelations, Va-Ha-Chalam Hem, which, Asher, they recount to and record among, proclaiming to, Sapar, one another, La Ish, and to their revolting countrymen and evil associates, La Riahu. In the same manner while in a relationship, Ka Asher, with the Lord, Baha Baal, their forefathers, Abhem, overlooked, ignored, and forgot, Shakik, my name, Eth Shem Eni. Yirmiyah 23:27. 547 Let the prophet, Ha-Nabi, who associates himself with these revelations, thoughts, and feelings, Asher Eth Hu Chalam, continue to recount and record, choosing to write, publish, and communicate, Sapar, these thoughts, dreams, and altered revelations, Shalom, and, to reveal the way to receive the benefits of the relationship, Wa Asher, my word, Dabar Eni, will be effectively communicated by him, Dabar Eth Hu, truthfully and reliably, emith. What does Ma, the straw, La Ha Teben, have in common with that which is purifying and enlightening, Eth Ha Bar? Prophetically asks, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:28. Is not Ha Lo this, Ko my word, Dabar any, similar to Ka, fire, Esh? Authoritatively questions, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, and similar to, Wakar, an implement which Patish, breaks apart, Patsas, earthen defenses, Selah. Yirmiyah 23:29. So likewise, and this considered, Laken, look up and pay attention, Hine, I am against those who claim to speak for me, Al-Ha-Nabi, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. These individuals, Ish, steal, taking without permission, Ganab, my words, Dabarym any, away from, Min, their fellow countrymen, Ethriahu. Yirmiyah 23:30. So please take note, Hine, I am against, any al, the inspired pontifications of those who prophesy on behalf of the gods, Ha-Nabi, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, who select their tongues and speeches, Ha-Lakak Lashon-hem, and who persistently and emphatically speak as if under divine influence, Wa-Naum Naum. Yirmiyah 23:31. 548 Right here and right now, Hine, I am against, any al, the continuous prophetic pronouncements of those who speak on behalf of the gods, Ha-Nobah, along with the mistaken beliefs, false hope, deceptive notions, and fraudulent nature, Sheka, of the revelations, impressions, and feelings, Shalom, declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah, in addition to, Wa, those who recount, write, and profess them, Sapahem, and thereby, Wa-eth, wander away, misleading, Tah, my people, Ameni, through their lies and falsehoods, Basakahem, and through their rude and impertinent, arrogant and reckless, self-willed and stubborn speech, Wa-Bar-Pakazuthem. I, Wa-Eni, did not send them or authorize them, Lo-Shalakhem, and I did not instruct, appoint, direct, or authorize them, Wa-Lo-Zawahem. And so, they are of absolutely no value or benefit whatsoever, Wa-Yal-Lo-Yal, to the family, La-Ha-Ha-Zeh, declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:32. Therefore, should one of these people, Wa-Ky-Ha-Am, ask you, shall, about this, Ha-Zeh, or alternatively, Our, the prophet, Nabi, or, Our, the priest, Cohen, so as to say, La Ma, what is, Ma, Yahowah's, Yahowah, prophetic pronouncement about lifting up and carrying away, his inspired revelation regarding assistance, forgiveness and support, Massa. And you respond to them, Wa Ma El-Hem, what, Eth Ma, prophetic revelation about lifting up and carrying away, Massa. Then, Wa, I will reject and abandon you, Natash Eth Atom, prophetically declares, Naum, Yahowah, Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:33. But the prophet, Wa-Ha-Nabi, as well as the priest, Wa-Ha-Cohen, and the people, Wa-Ha-Am, who, for the benefit of the relationship, Asher, consistently and actually speak about, Amar, the prophetic pronouncement regarding the assistance, forgiveness, 549 and support, Massa, of Yahowah, Yahowah, I will pay attention to and attend to, value and accept, taking stock of and looking after, Hakad, that closely aligned and unique individual, Al-Ha-Ish-Ha-Hu, as well as his godly family and home, Wa-Al-Baith-Hu. Yirmiyah 23:34. This is what, Ko, you should actually say, Amar, each individual, Ish, on behalf of, Al, his fellow countrymen, Hu, and, Wa, each person, Ish, on behalf of, Al, his brethren, Hu, what, Ma, has Yahowah, Yahowah, answered and replied, Anna, and what, Wa Ma, has Yahowah, Yahowah, communicated in his word, Dabar. Yirmiyah 23:35. However, Wa, the prophetic pronouncement regarding lifting up and carrying away, Massa, by Yahowah, Yahowah, you no longer mention, memorialize, or even remember, Lo Zakar Ode. By contrast, KY, for each individual, La Ish, there exists his own, higher, revelation regarding forgiveness and assistance, Massa, his own word, Dabar-Hu. You change and twist, perverting and convoluting, Chafak, the words, Dabar, of the living, Shem, God, Elohim, Yahowah, Yahowah, of the spiritual implements, Zaba, our God, Elohim and Akhu. Yirmiyah 23:36. So, this is what, Ko, you should actually say, Amar, to the alleged prophet, El-Ha-Nabi, what was, Ma, Yahowah's, Yahowah, response to you, and answers for you, Anna Otter, and, Wa, what has, Ma, Yahowah, Yahowah, communicated in his word, Dabarym. Yirmiyah 23:37. But with YM, you proclaiming, Amar, the prophetic pronouncement of Yahowah lifting up and carrying away, Masa Yahowah, then as a result, Laken 550 Ko, Yahowah says, Yahowah Amar, because, Yan, you have acknowledged this, saying these words, Amar etameth ha Dabarym hazeh, this is the prophetic pronouncement of Yahowah lifting up and carrying away, Masa Yahowah, then when I reached out to you and dispatched you, Wa shalak el atom, to explain it, La Amar, you did not renounce or question. Lo Amar, the inspired revelation and authorized promises about the assistance, forgiveness, and support of Yahowah, Masa Yahowah. Yirmiyah 23:38. Otherwise, Laken here and now, Hine, I myself, would forget about you, any nasha eth atom, and would cast you away, wa natash eth atom, from my presence, min alpana any, because of your trickery and deception, nasha, along with the inhabitants of the city, wa eth ha ear, which, to provide the benefits of the relationship, Asher, I gave to you, Nathan la atom, and to your forefathers, wa la by atom. Yirmiyah 23:39. And, wa, I will bestow, Nathan, upon you, al atom, an everlasting, olam, censure and reprimand, chirper, as well as, wa, eternal, olam, humiliation and ignominy, leading to a diminished and lowly status, kalamoth, which, to affirm the narrow and correct path to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, cannot be ignored, lo shakak. Yirmiyah, Jeremiah 23:40. God is forthright. He loves his people but hates their religion. Judaism will soon be extinct, along with Christianity and Islam, socialism and conspiracism. Before we move on, I'd like to share 2 additional thoughts. I have come to realize that to properly convey God's word, we must know God. Further, the most important considerations for achieving an accurate and reliable rendition of his testimony are context, research, and consistency. 551 From the beginning, this has been a prophetic discussion, one focused upon Daud's contribution to our lives. We have witnessed a time when Yahowah is no longer silent regarding religion. He will demand recompense from the rabbis for having misled his people, for having spoken on behalf of the Lord, for having lied, and for having forgotten about the means he has ascribed to lift us up and carry us away. The moment any portion of this chapter is removed from this context, the moment we get lazy and stop considering word roots, the moment we slack in our rigor to do his thoughts justice, the resulting translations and conclusions become inaccurate and arbitrary, and much of this discussion's meaning is squandered. The second thought I'd like to leave you with is that the words Yahowah has revealed, to the degree that they have been accurately retained by scribes, which for the Hebrew text is very high, to the degree that our lexicons of ancient Hebrew are reasonably precise, and when they are questionable, we consider the first use of the word, and to the degree that I have properly used the full array of resources at our disposal to render his testimony correctly and completely. The words Yahowah revealed can be trusted and relied upon. My commentary, however, which is often substantial, while often inspired, is potentially fallible. This known, my comments are based upon what God is saying in his testimony. I enjoy the resulting insights so much, I find that I'm unable to restrain myself from sharing what I can glean from his words with you. However, if, based upon your own careful observation of Yahowah's testimony, you come to a different conclusion from time to time, wonderful. Rather than argue with you, I applaud you. Yah's word is comprised of much 552 more than I'm capable of comprehending, and I'm certain that there are messages that I'm missing, all of which encourages us to observe the Torah, prophets, and Psalms so that we become enlightened. It is the most rewarding endeavor a person can undertake.